Tiny predators that trap their prey inside their own bodies, animals that survive without oxygen, and mammals so rare they might as well be ghosts. These are creatures discovered that didn't fit in any category. Ankyracysta twista is a microscopic predator that doesn't neatly fit anywhere on the tree of life. It's tiny. You'd need a microscope to see it. It was first discovered in a water sample from a tropical coral in San Diego Aquarium. What makes it really weird is how it lives. It hunts other tiny creatures by basically trapping them with a special structure inside its body. When scientists looked at its DNA, they realized it didn't belong to any group that we already know. It's not a plant, not an animal, not a fungus. It's something completely different. Its genes are so unique that researchers had to put it in its own branch of the family tree of life. That means it split off from other life forms a really long time ago and has been doing its own thing ever since. Even its energy systems are unusual. The part of the cell that produces energy has way more genes than almost any other cell we know. Up next, we have a weird little creature called Spinoloricus kinsei. Sounds like a dinosaur, but this is a tiny animal that lives in one of the strangest environments you can imagine. The deep, oxygen-free mud at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. Most animals, of course, need oxygen to survive, but this species doesn't. It spends its entire life in a place where oxygen just doesn't exist. Researchers first described it in 2014 after collecting samples from the basin. When they looked at the mud under microscopes, they found this creature and a few close relatives actively moving and feeding. So these creatures were surviving completely without oxygen. That's pretty much unheard of. Inside their cells, these animals are built differently from almost every other animal. The parts of the cell that normally use oxygen to make energy are adapted to work without it, so they can live in conditions that would be fatal to nearly all other forms of life. In 1992, biologists from a joint French-Vietnamese team were surveying wildlife when locals brought them two strange skulls with these long, straight horns. The villagers had found them while hunting and brought them over. When the team looked closely, they noticed the skulls didn't match any known antelope, cow, or similar animal. The horns, the shape of the skull, the markings, everything was different. This was some unknown type of large mammal. They named it the saula, sometimes called the Vukang ox. Both males and females have those straight horns, and they have these distinctive white marks on their faces. Even after the discovery, spotting a live saula is incredibly rare. Most of what scientists know come from camera traps or rare sightings from the 90s and early 2000s. They're critically endangered, said to be fewer than 100 left in the wild, and they're so elusive that they're basically one of the rarest mammals on Earth. Way back when dinosaurs were still roaming the planet, long before humans ever showed up, ants were already part of the ecosystem, but they didn't look like ants we see today. In 2025, scientists revealed they'd identified the oldest ant fossil ever found. And it's pretty different from what most people picture when they think of ants. This fossil comes from a rock formation in northeastern Brazil. It's about 113 million years old, older than any ant fossil ever found. The ant belongs to a group researchers call hell ants because of their strange jaws and odd look. This particular species had scythe-like mouth parts that pointed forward, so instead of opening side to side like modern ants, its jaws moved up and down, a very different way of catching and holding on to prey. Another thing that sets it apart is that it probably had wings and a stinger like a wasp, so it probably hunted differently than the ants we see today. About 95 million years ago, long before humans or even most of the dinosaurs you'd heard of were around, there was a small croc-like animal walking around what is now southwest Montana. Paleontologists first discovered it in the summer of 2021, when a student named Harrison Allen spotted something sticking out of a rock in an area called the Blackleaf Formation. It turned out to be a fossil no bigger than the tip of his pinky finger. When he showed it to his professor, they realized he'd found the skull of a juvenile croc relative that had never been seen before. The little creature was nicknamed Elton, partly because the team listened to Elton John's song Crocodile Rock when they worked. But its scientific name is whatever the hell this is. Let me try. Whatever. Elton's skull was only about 2 inches long, and the whole animal is roughly 2 feet from nose to tail as a youngster. Even as an adult, though, researchers think it wouldn't have grown past 3 feet. tiny compared with most of its crocodile relatives that were around at the time. What really makes this creature stand out isn't just that size though, its teeth were this mix of different shapes instead of the usual simple ones you see in modern crocs. Its bones suggest it lived on land, not in rivers or swamps. So that mix of features didn't match anything scientists had seen before. So when they analyzed the fossil, they realized Elton belonged to an unknown branch of croc relatives that lived in North America during the Cretaceous. Human-animal hybrid chimeras. That does not sound like a real thing, but it is. Human-animal hybrid chimeras are creatures that combine human and animal cells, resulting in organisms with both human and non-human characteristics. Imagine a being with the body of a pig, but with human brain cells. Crazy, but it does have its upsides when it comes to stem cell research and organ transplantation. But obviously there's some ethical things to consider, and there have been legal restrictions on this kind of research. In the United States, the Human-Animal Chimera Prohibition Act of 2016 was introduced to address some of these concerns. On August 22nd, 2016, Representative Christopher H. Smith put forth a bill that prohibits creating a human-animal chimera, transferring human embryos into non-human wombs, or vice versa. Penalties could be pretty severe, hefty fines and/or imprisonment for up to 10 years. But the bill didn't end up getting passed. Humanzees. These are hypothetical hybrids of humans and chimpanzees. There are rumors and conspiracies about attempts being made to create them, but none have been 100% verified. Doesn't sound all that outlandish to me though. Obviously this type of experiment would be highly unethical, so it would make sense that there would be attempts to cover it up. The first and most infamous attempt to create a human-chimpanzee hybrid was spearheaded by a Soviet biologist, Ilya Ivanov. Ivanov had set out to create a human-chimpanzee hybrid as early as 1910. By the 1920s, he was trying to artificially inseminate female chimpanzees to create part human, part chimp offspring. It didn't work, but his next plan was even more ambitious. He wanted to impregnate human women instead, but that's when the government supposedly stepped in and put a halt to his work. Then in the 70s, there was a chimpanzee named Oliver who became a bit famous when rumors started to spread that he might be part human. He had some unusual physical traits, an odd cranial shape, and he had freckles, but a genetic analysis in 1996 revealed that Oliver had the standard 48 chromosomes of a chimpanzee, not the 47 you'd find in a hybrid. So Oliver was just an unusually unique chimp. But stories about human-chimp hybrids don't end there. In 1981, a story came out about a chimpanzee being impregnated by a human in 1967 in China. A man named Ji Yongzheng, the head of the hospital in Shenyang, said that he'd been part of this experiment. According to him, the chimp was successfully impregnated but died from neglect when the Cultural Revolution disrupted the research, and scientists involved were sent away to farm labor. In 2019, there were also reports of a research team led by Professor Juan Carlos Espelza Belmont from the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in California having success with creating human-monkey chimeras. These embryos, which were only allowed to develop for a few weeks, were reportedly created in China to sidestep legal restrictions in the States. They weren't allowed to develop past the early stages in order to avoid more ethical issues. Let's talk about ligers. A liger is a hybrid cross between a male lion and a female tiger. Unlike chimeras, ligers aren't the result of genetic splicing or more complicated science experiments. Instead, this is just straightforward breeding. With that said though, there's still a ton of controversy with this. Ligers are often larger than either parent species thanks to a phenomenon called hybrid vigor. This means they can grow to be enormous, often reaching sizes beyond even the largest lions or tigers, and they can be very strong. But the major issues with ligers is their health. They usually have a whole list of physical problems, like joint issues, organ problems, and a lot of this has to do with their rapid growth and the fact that obviously they're not really supposed to exist. Plus, these things only exist in captivity. Ligers are bred for spectacle. Breeding ligers is legal in many places, but it's heavily scrutinized and of course
illegal in others. Glowfish were the first genetically modified pets. They're a zebrafish that glow in the dark. Glowfish were developed in 1999 by scientists who inserted a gene from a jellyfish into a zebrafish. This gene causes the fish to produce a fluorescent protein, making them glow under ultraviolet light. Now, originally these fish were created to help detect environmental pollutants. If the water was contaminated, the fish would change color. But the glowing fish just looked so cool that companies started seeing dollar signs. Legally, glowfish are somewhat of a gray area. They were first marketed in Singapore, where the regulations on GMOs were more lenient. When they were introduced to the United States in 2003, there was a lot of controversy. Some thought they were neat, little nifty novelties. Others had concerns about the ethics of creating genetically modified pets and the impacts they could have on nature if they were to escape into the wild. Glowfish are legal and available to buy in a lot of places, but they're banned or restricted in others. For example, California has specific regulations when it comes to the sale and transport of genetically modified organisms, and glowfish were banned there for a long time. I think they may be legal now though. If anyone's from California in the audience, please let me know. Deep off the coast of northwest Australia, researchers recently discovered this small, unusual octopus that lives in the deep ocean, thousands of meters below the surface. It's called the carnivore flapjack octopus. It's tiny, only about 4 centimeters across. Unlike the octopuses most people are familiar with, its body is soft and gelatinous, and it has large fins above its eyes that help it move slowly through near total darkness. This octopus has a pancake-like shape, which is of course how it got the nickname flapjack. It can flatten itself to glide along the seafloor or curl into a little umbrella as it drifts with the currents. It's perfectly adapted to life in the midnight zone, hunting tiny worms and crustaceans in almost complete darkness. In 1998, hunters in Laos brought a strange rodent to biologists. It looked unfamiliar, like nothing else in Southeast Asia. When scientists studied it, they realized it wasn't just a new species or even a new genus. It belonged to a lineage of rodents thought to have disappeared around 11 million years ago. This creature, later named the Laotian rock rat, turned out to be the living representative of a group of rodents that fossils showed had been around way back in the Miocene, so tens of millions of years ago. Before this discovery, Western science assumed that that entire branch had gone extinct long ago. Instead, it had been surviving in remote forests in Laos completely unnoticed. Back in the summer of 2020, a group of researchers exploring reptiles in the mountains of northern India came across a few brown snakes lying out on a mud road in Himachal Pradesh. Scientists took a closer look at their DNA and realized these were something completely new to science. This new serpent grows to about 22 inches long, and it's noticed by its copper brown color and this faint band around its neck that almost looks like a collar. It has a short head with fairly large nostrils and lots of teeth, which set it apart from similar snakes in the area. Researchers have since found the species in other parts of the region too, and even parts of Nepal. Back in 2000, researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute were exploring waters off the California coast with a remote-controlled submersible, when they started seeing an odd, transparent creature drifting in the water. They were exploring the Midnight Zone, which is the open water hundreds to thousands of meters down, where almost no light reaches. Scientists didn't know what to make of this thing, so they just called it the mystery mollusk. For more than 2 decades, their cameras spotted this thing again and again, more than 150 individual sightings. But it took until 2024 for the team to officially describe it as a new species and give it a name, Bathydevius caudactylus. It's not just a new species, it's so different from known sea slugs that it gets its own family. It has a big flexible hood at one end and a flat tail with finger-like thingies at the other end. Instead of crawling on the seafloor like most sea slugs, this one swims freely in the water by flexing its whole body up and down. It doesn't sink or float on its own, it sort of just hangs in the water, moving slowly or drifting with the currents. It uses that hood like a trap to catch small shrimp-like animals, and strange as it sounds, it also glows. Bits of its body can light up, and it can even drop glowing little pieces of its tail to distract something that might be trying to eat it. Incertasquilla chimera is a recently discovered mantis shrimp that stands out because it doesn't fit neatly into any of the categories scientists normally use
for these animals. Mantis shrimp are marine crustaceans. They're not true shrimp like the ones you eat, but they are shrimp-like and known for being fierce little hunters in the ocean. What's unusual about this one, though, is that when researchers looked at it, they realized its combination of features didn't match any known family of mantis shrimp. That's why they had to create this new genus just for it. The first specimen of this species was collected in 2008 off the coast of Western Australia. Since then, more have been found near Japan, showing it lives across a wide stretch of the Indo-Pacific. It's about 3.5 inches long, has striped coloring, and even has false eye spots on its tail that probably help scare off predators. Its claws can unfold extremely fast to catch prey like small fish, and its eyes are very complex, helping it track movement really well. And scientists named it Chimera because of the mix of traits. Makes it look like a blend of things normally seen in several different mantis shrimp groups. That mix is exactly why it didn't fit where anything else fit, so it had to be placed in its own new category. Przewalski's horses are a rare species. One of the last truly wild horse breeds left on Earth. Native to the steppes of Central Asia, these horses were on the verge of extinction, but there have been a few attempts made to get their population back to a healthy place. In 1998, an experiment took place in the wake of the most disastrous nuclear accident in history, the Chernobyl exclusion zone. The vast area around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant had been evacuated due to radiation, and was then transformed into a sort of nature reserve with only a small handful of humans inhabiting the area. It seemed like the perfect place to release 31 of these endangered horses. Today, these horses have not only survived, but thrived. By 2019, their population in the Chernobyl zone had grown to over 100. And are there some possible negative consequences thanks to radiation? Possibly, but probably better than human tampering. Obviously, considering how rare these horses are and the conservation efforts being made, people aren't allowed to mess with these horses. Unfortunately, though, poaching has been an issue and it's taken a bit of a toll on their numbers. Alright, next up is genetically modified salmon, produced by a company called Aqua Bounty Technologies. Now, this one is different from others on the list because there aren't restrictions on them, but there really should be, and I'll explain why. So these are the first genetically modified salmon approved by the FDA for commercial production and consumption. Aqua Bounty Technologies took genes from two other fish, Pacific Chinook salmon and the ocean pout, and inserted them into the Atlantic salmon's DNA. But why? Well, the goal was to create salmon that grow about twice as fast as regular salmon do. Instead of just growing seasonally like natural salmon, these guys grow all year round. So they're available on your plate all the time. Very convenient, but not everyone is on board with this. One big worry is what might happen if these GM salmon were to escape into the wild. Even though the FDA insists that this is not a concern because the salmon are raised in controlled environments and are sterile females that can't even produce anyway, a lot of people just don't want to eat genetically modified food. Well, alright, big deal, just don't buy them then. Well, that's the issue. The Aqua Advantage salmon doesn't have to be labeled as genetically modified because according to the FDA, there are no biological differences between it and the non-GMO salmon. So if you're trying to avoid GMO foods, you might not even know you're eating one. In 2015, a team of scientists from South Korea and China successfully created what they called double-muscled pigs by editing a single gene, the myostatin gene, or the MSTN, which naturally regulates muscle growth. By turning off this gene, they created these very jacked pigs. The goal is to have these pigs approved for human consumption, but that didn't end up happening. The idea is pretty straightforward. In theory, modify the genes to create meatier pigs and other animals like cows and goats. Sounds like a dream for the meat industry, but in practice things get a lot messier. When CRISPR is used to edit the genes, it's often done by first altering individual cells from the animal's skin, then using cloning techniques to turn these cells into embryos. The cloning process can create a lot of problems. For example, in China, out of 900 genetically engineered pig embryos, only 8 survived with the desired genetic changes. Many of the piglets that did survive were born with severe health problems, like thickened tongues, and many didn't make it past their first few months.
GMO mosquitoes. These little critters are designed to help fight diseases like malaria, but like with everything on this list, there is some controversy here as well. One of the big selling points of GMO mosquitoes is their potential to reduce populations of disease-carrying mosquitoes over time. The idea is to release genetically modified male mosquitoes that are designed to outcompete wild males for mates. The offspring of these matings won't survive to adulthood, gradually lowering the mosquito population that carries diseases. Field tests have shown that these GMO mosquitoes don't appear to have any major impact on humans. They're engineered to target specific mosquito species, which means the risks to other species or humans seems minimal. Another advantage is that introducing GMO mosquitoes doesn't involve pesticides. This is a big one for those concerned about harmful chemicals being released into the environment. Now, on the flip side, these modified insects could carry or even develop unknown pathogens that might be harmful to humans. There's also criticism that not enough long-term testing has been done to understand their full impact. There's also a fear that these GMO mosquitoes might mutate into a form that could reproduce, which could create a new set of problems. This last one is quite dubious. The flying umbuku lizard. So the story goes that scientists in Zimbabwe managed to unlock a dormant genetic trait in the umbuku lizard, a small, rare reptile supposedly native to Africa. The lizard is believed to be a descendant of the pterodactyl, the prehistoric flying reptile. So these scientists were able to reawaken a flying strand of DNA that had lain dormant for millions of years. And the result, they created the flying umbuku lizard. To date, apparently, only 6 of these flying lizards have been produced, and they're kept completely separate from the regular umbuku lizards, just to make sure there's no crossbreeding between the genetically modified lizards and the non-modified ones. I can't find a lot of info on this one. I'm not so sure I buy it. But what do you all think? Let us know down in the comments. In 2007 and 2008, 2 baby mammoths, later named Lyuba and Chroma, were found in Siberia. They were so well preserved that researchers were able to piece together how they died, even though both calves, one about 1 month old and the other 2 months old, died more than 40,000 years ago. Scientists used CT scans to find that the 2 mammoths probably choked on mud after falling into water. Daniel Fisher, a co-author of the study, stated the mud was like a really thick batter that they got clogged in their trachea and they were unable to dislodge by coughing. Basically preserved them from taking another breath. Lyuba and the 1-month-old calf was discovered by a reindeer herder. Chroma was found in 2008, frozen upright in permafrost. Scavengers had eaten parts of her heart, lungs, and skull. But both mummies still showed a neonatal line on their teeth, a marker of stress during birth, which helped scientists estimate their ages. CT scans of Lyuba showed signs of what's called a mammalian dive reflex, showing that she fell through the ice into a muddy lake where she tried to clear the mud from her airways but eventually suffocated. Chroma, who had a belly full of breast milk, also had mud in her trachea, but her death is a bit less cut and dry. But according to researchers, it's possible she fell into a river, broke her back, and was then buried in mud while trying to escape. In 2015, scientists in Siberia discovered a baby woolly rhino, perfectly preserved in a frozen riverbank. Nicknamed Sasha after the man who found it, the rhino calf is the most complete specimen of its kind ever discovered. Sasha lived around 10,000 years ago, was about 1.5 meters long, or almost 5 feet, and 0.8 meters high, about 2.6 feet, much smaller than the fully grown adults, which could reach up to 15 feet long. According to Albert Protopopov from the Yakutian Academy of Sciences, baby woolly rhinos are incredibly rare to find, so this was a pretty amazing discovery, especially because it helps researchers learn more about the early life of these animals, which they didn't really know much about before. Woolly rhinos went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Climate change and habitat loss likely led to their extinction, but some scientists also think overhunting may have been a part of it. Around 30,000 years ago in Siberia, a tiny cave lion cub was making its way across the tundra when a sudden mudslide or crack in the permafrost caused the cub to fall and get trapped. The cub was buried in ice, preserving her fur, skin, and organs in almost perfect condition. This poor cub, later named Sparta, was discovered by mammoth tusk hunters in 2017, poking out of the melting permafrost in Yakutia, Siberia. Sparta is probably the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found, said Love Dallin, one of the study's co-authors, going on to say that even her whiskers were preserved. Sparta died about 28,000 years ago, and she was actually found alongside another cub named Boris, who was even older, dying around 43,000 years ago. Both cubs were about 1 to 2 months old when they died, with their sharp teeth just starting to emerge. Cave lions were closely related to modern African lions and lived across the northern hemisphere during the Ice Age. Unlike today's lions, though, these were, of course, adapted to freezing cold weather. In 2020, a perfectly preserved bear mummy was discovered in the Siberian permafrost. Siberia again. But anyway, it wasn't quite what scientists expected. At first, researchers thought they'd found the remains of a giant extinct cave bear, but eventually they realized the bear was much younger and from a completely different species. The bear was found by reindeer herders on a remote island in the East Siberian Sea. It was so well preserved that scientists could still see its skin, fur, claws, teeth, nose, internal organs, and even body fat. The remains were named the Etherican bear after a nearby river. At first, researchers at the Lazarev Mammoth Museum believed the bear was a cave bear, a massive species that went extinct about 22,000 years ago, but this bear was only about 3,460 years old. Turned out to be a young female brown bear standing just over 5 feet tall and weighing around 172 pounds. It was probably around 2 to 3 years old when it died. The bear's stomach contents revealed it had been eating plants and birds, with feathers still found inside its belly, which is incredible when you think about it. It also had signs of spinal injuries, which may have contributed to its death. The gaboon viper is a snake found in the jungles of Africa. They can grow pretty large, up to 6 feet long, and they're built to blend in with their surroundings. Its pattern looks almost like dead leaves or tree bark, so it's nearly impossible to spot unless you're looking carefully. But when it feels threatened, it strikes fast, and their fangs can grow up to 2 inches long. The venom is highly toxic, causing rapid, painful swelling, intense pain, and possibly severe shock. The area around the bite can blister up, you might see bruising. In more serious cases, the venom messes with your entire body, can cause uncoordinated movement, make you lose control of your bladder or bowels, and cause your tongue and eyelids to swell up. Eventually, it'll lead to convulsions, loss of consciousness, your BLOOD might stop clotting. If the bite's bad enough, doctors might need to surgically remove tissue or even take off an entire limb. You get the point. This can all get pretty life-threatening. Even after being treated, healing takes time, and there have been cases where people have died during recovery. And a lot of bites occur because people will just accidentally step on these things. That's how well camouflage they are. Plus, they move quietly. They don't rattle or hiss before they attack. They just sit there waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Goliath bird eater is this massive tarantula found in the rainforests of northern South America, like Brazil and Venezuela. It's the largest spider in the world by weight and size, and its leg span can reach up to 12 inches or 30 centimeters. They spend most of their time in burrows, only coming out at night to hunt. You'll mostly find them in the Amazon rainforest, hiding in marshy, swampy areas. In terms of what they eat, well, you'd guess it's birds, based on the name, and yeah, they'll eat a bird if they feel like it, but birds don't make up the bulk of their diet. The fact that they can, though, is just horrifying. They'll mostly eat large insects, frogs, and small reptiles. How they eat is also super icky though. A bird eater will drag its prey back to its burrow and then suck out all its liquids, kind of like a chupacabra. And when threatened, the Goliath bird eater gets defensive. It'll rub its legs and abdomen to release tiny hairs that'll irritate your skin and mucous membranes. It can also bite. Thankfully, their venom isn't deadly to humans, but it is painful, a bit like a wasp sting in terms of pain. But who cares about the venom? We're talking about a 12-inch spider. If that doesn't give you the ick, I'm really not sure what will. A giant African land snail is a pretty incredible looking animal. They really live up to the giant title. I mean, look at these things. For a snail, that is downright terrifying, but these creatures aren't as exotic as you'd think they are, at least not now. Originally in the jungles of Africa, these snails have been causing a lot of trouble around the world as an invasive species. They're found in urban areas and agricultural land nowadays, where they wreak havoc on crops and spread disease. They like to hide during the day, typically in shady spots like leaf piles or tree trunks. They're most at home in warmer, humid environments, but they can tolerate a wide range of temperatures too, even freezing cold. They can also survive without food or water for long stretches of time by sealing themselves in their shells. And this adaptability makes them pretty dangerous when you consider the fact that they carry a parasite that can cause a dangerous form of meningitis in humans. If you eat one of these things raw or even touch one, at times you could get infected, and this parasite can be life-threatening. These giant snails also transmit plant diseases, so farmers absolutely hate these things. There have been times when flamethrowers have had to be used to try and eradicate them. Bullet ants, found in the rainforests of South America, aren't just any ordinary ants. These things are known for having the most powerful sting in the insect world. The pain is said to feel quite literally like being shot, and the pain lasts for hours. Some will even say up to 24 hours. And during that time, it's almost impossible to think about anything else. I would probably rather die than go through that. It's so bad that people have described it as feeling like fire walking over your skin. Bullet ants are pretty large too, about the size of your pinky. And they aren't shy creatures. They're super aggressive and territorial, so if you get too close to their colony, expect to feel the full brunt of their sting. Their sting is so notorious that some Amazonian tribes will use them for initiation rituals. Young men will wear these gloves filled with these ants, and the gloves are left on for usually about 10 minutes, and they're just bitten repeatedly. Next up, we have bull sharks. Yes, these sharks are often found in the Amazon River as well. They're known for being one of the most dangerous sharks in the world. They're aggressive, territorial, and they can live in both saltwater and freshwater. This means they can be found in places like the Amazon River, where they lurk in murky water, often coming pretty close to the shore. These sharks will eat pretty much anything. They'll go after fish, birds, river dolphins, and mammals, humans included. They're big too. Female bull sharks can reach about 8 feet long and weigh over 290 pounds, while males are a little smaller. But there are rare cases of bull sharks getting even bigger, hitting up to 13 feet. On top of that, they're pretty bulky, with a body shape that makes them heavier than other sharks of similar length. And not only are these sharks one of the 3 shark species most likely to attack humans, they also have an insanely powerful bite. Their jaw pressure can reach up to 1,330 pounds of force, which pound for pound is said to be the strongest bite of any shark species. To put it simply, they can just crush almost anything with their teeth. The Brazilian wandering spider is one of the deadliest spiders in the world. Its venom can cause excruciating pain, and in some cases it's even fatal. But what really sets this spider apart is its style of hunting. Most spiders wait around in their webs for their prey to come to them, but the Brazilian wandering spider actually goes out and looks for its food. They're nocturnal, so at night they roam the jungle chasing down insects, amphibians, and even small mammals like mice. They're big, hairy, and incredibly fast. They'll often sprint after their prey and then pounce on it. If you're camping in the jungle, you might end up with one of these things crawling into your tent. The harpy eagle. This is one of the most terrifying but impressive birds of prey in the world. These things are massive, with a wingspan that can stretch up to 7 feet. They have the biggest talons of any living eagle, some as long as 5 inches, big enough to snatch up sloths and monkeys right out of the trees, which is mostly what they hunt. They're not the type to sit and wait like some birds of prey. Harpy eagles actively roam the jungle in search of their food, often swooping down from a perch to grab their prey. Their preferred hunting ground is the dense lowland rainforests of Central and South America, where they stalk the treetops. They're strong enough to pick up prey that weighs about half their own body weight. And when hunting, they'll grab their prey with those massive talons, fly off with them, and bring them back to their nest. Next up is the satanic leaf-tailed gecko. That's right, we have a gecko spawned from the fiery pits of hell. Forget that gecko from those car insurance commercials. These things look like they were forged from magma. It gets its nickname for a reason. I mean, look at it. Its body is shaped like a dead leaf, and it has a tail that looks like it's been chewed up and spat out. And this is no accident. The gecko's appearance is a way of blending in with the forest environment of Madagascar. And this gecko has the ability to change color. It's not like a chameleon that shifts through a rainbow of colors, but more like it can match the color and pattern of its immediate surroundings. Again, this helps the gecko avoid being someone else's lunch. Also, those eyes. They're huge, reddish orange, and have vertical pupils, super devilish looking. And I love when these things go all red and like lava looking. Really cool. Their eyes are also adapted for low light conditions, helping these geckos hunt for insects in the dimly lit forests. Next up we have eye-eyes. These things look like creatures you'd see on whatever planet the Greys come from. Just very creepy and alien looking. Eye-eyes are some weird creatures. They're lemurs, but not really the cute fluffy ones that you typically think of. These guys look like they've been pieced together from various different animals. They're just really mangy looking. I don't know, some people might find these cute. I just don't. They have big eyes and bushy tails, which sounds pleasant enough, but their most distinctive feature is their freakishly long, thin fingers. Again, very alien looking. Their middle finger is especially elongated, which is kind of awesome, but they use it for tapping on tree bark to find grubs and insects hiding underneath. There's also a myth that they're a harbinger of bad luck. Some folks in Madagascar, where eye-eyes are again found, believe these creatures are omens of doom, and some think that if an eye-eye points its long, bony finger at you, bad luck is coming your way. Finally, we have Darwin's bark spider. Darwin's bark spider, a small arachnid also native to Madagascar, builds incredible webs. While the spider itself is quite small, its webs are absolutely colossal, sometimes spanning rivers. And they're sturdy too. If you come across one without knowing anything about these spiders, you'd probably think Shelob was stalking the forest. The silk they produce to build their webs is incredibly strong. In fact, it's approximately 10 times stronger than Kevlar. The females, which are bigger than the males, build webs that can sometimes measure around 80 feet across. The strength and size of their webs allows them to capture not only small insects, but also larger prey. Webs are often found with upwards of 30 prey insects caught in them. In 2016, a gold miner in Yukon, Canada discovered something frozen in the ice. It turned out to be an ancient wolf pup, which had been almost perfectly preserved for 57,000 years. The mummified gray wolf, known as Zur, was found in the Klondike goldfields near Dawson City. Lead researcher Julie Machen, an anatomy professor, called it, quote, the most complete wolf specimen ever found from the Ice Age, going on to say all her soft tissue, her hair, her skin, even her little nose is still there. She's just complete, and that is really rare. Using radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis, scientists confirmed Zur died at just 7 weeks old. The remains were especially important because they were discovered in North America, unlike most finds in Siberia, as you've seen from this list, which are harder to access. Machen and her team were able to link Zur's DNA to both ancient Beringian wolves from Yukon and Russian gray wolves, which means that ancient wolves from North America and Eurasia mixed. Zur's remains also showed them what Ice Age wolves ate. The assumption had always been that they mostly ate bison or oxen, but as it turned out, this wolf mostly consumed aquatic animals, much like modern wolves in Alaska. In 2011, members of a tribe in northern Siberia found the remains of a steppe bison, perfectly preserved after being frozen for nearly 10,000 years. The bison was transported to the Yakutian Academy of Sciences, where scientists began to study it. Unlike other bison mummies discovered over the years, this one was almost entirely intact, with its internal organs in remarkable condition. Olga Potapova, collections curator at the Mammoth site of Hot Springs, explained that while bison mummies are not uncommon, they're usually incomplete, saying, quote, normally what you find with mummies of megafauna is partial carcasses, but this mummy was preserved so well that it earned a record for the level of its preservation. The bison, which was probably about 4 years old when it died, looked like it had starved to death. There was no fat around its abdomen, but its heart and digestive systems were pretty intact, even though some organs had shrunk over time. Researchers even managed to extract tissue samples from each organ, and for the first time ever, they found steppe bison brain tissue still preserved. In 2022, a nearly perfectly mummified baby woolly mammoth was discovered by a miner in the permafrost of Canada's Klondike goldfields, dating back around 30,000 years. The calf, thought to be around 1 month old when it died, was a female and measured just 4.5 feet long. Researchers described it as the most complete mummified mammoth found in North America. A lot of its skin and hair was still intact. As an Ice Age paleontologist, it had been one of my lifelong dreams to come face to face with a real woolly mammoth, said Grant Zazula, a paleontologist with the Yukon government, going on to describe the mammoth as, quote, one of the most incredible mummified Ice Age animals ever discovered in the world. The discovery happened when a mine worker hit something unexpected while digging. The team stopped all their work and brought in geologists who managed to recover the mammoth's remains, and just in time because a storm had been rolling in. Analysis suggested that the mammoth may have died after getting trapped in mud while grazing, with grass found in her stomach. In 2018, yet another incredible discovery was made in Siberia. The nearly perfectly preserved mummified remains of an Ice Age horse, believed to have died between 30,000 and 40,000 years ago. Its body was so well preserved that even tiny details like the hairs in its nostrils and around its hooves were still visible. The foal was found deep in a crater, about 328 feet or 100 meters deep, during an expedition in Yakutia. It was around 2 months old when it died. The mummified body was almost entirely intact, with no visible damage. Scientists collected samples from the foal's hair and tissue and found it belonged to an extinct species known as the Lena horse, which was genetically distinct from the wild horses that still roam the area today. This species lived in Siberia tens of thousands of years ago and disappeared long before modern horses evolved. In 2016, biologist Steve Emsley was in southern Antarctica when he came across something kind of confusing. It looked to be a recently abandoned Adelie penguin colony. There were mummified chicks, guano stains, pebbles from nests, but the thing is, Adelie penguins hadn't been spotted in the region for centuries. What Emsley soon discovered was that the penguin remains were far older than anyone could have imagined. Radiocarbon dating of the bones, eggshells, and mummified skin showed that these penguins had been dead for thousands of years. The rapidly melting ice in Antarctica revealed these ancient penguin remains. The penguins had likely settled in the area during warmer periods when the sea ice melted early, allowing the birds to reach the area and build their nests. The most recent colony, which had been buried during the Little Ice Age about 800 years ago, was finally uncovered as the region's ice began to recede. What you're looking at here is a tardigrade, aka a water bear. Now, is this a newly discovered alien species? Well, I wish, but no. These things actually exist right here at home. They're just really, really tiny, which I'm thankful for, because imagine if that alien-looking thing was the size of just even a regular house cat. That would just be horrifying. Tardigrades, nicknamed water bears, are one of the most resilient animals on the planet. They're microscopic animals that are known for their ability to survive in very extreme conditions all over the world. In places like Antarctica, they've been found frozen in ice for thousands of years. And what's amazing about these things is their ability to go into a kind of state of suspended animation. When conditions are harsh, like extreme cold or dryness, tardigrades dry out or freeze and enter a kind of hibernation. And when researchers thaw them out, they can come back to life. Water bears have even survived space travel in this dormant state. This makes them one of the toughest known organisms in the world.
List at number 10, mystery spider. Yeah, for this first one, we're not even sure what kind of spider it is. How calming is that? Let's do it. Some kind of spider is making what's referred to as silkhenge. Yeah, this piece of spider art was first discovered back in 2013 by Troy Alexander, who posted a photo of it on the internet, asking for help in identifying what exactly he's looking at, but no one could help identify it because it's a totally unknown phenomenon. These structures are created by spiders or some sort of spider to help with reproduction because they're protecting their eggs. It looks quite alien, but this is all just to protect little baby spiders in that middle tip. There's one main spire that's constructed of spider silk, and that's where the eggs are contained, and then surrounding that spire is a sort of a circular fence that is also made of spider silk. Similar appearance to Stonehenge, hence the name Silkhenge. But to this day, we haven't found much. This was discovered back in 2013, and only a year ago, we got more information. Tropical science communicator Phil Torres recently visited Peru, and he got footage in 4K. It's beautiful. We no longer have to slide through the same 3 grainy photos. Check this out. Torres explains how this research has affected his well-being. Obviously, he said it's the thing that keeps him up at night because it's so annoyingly hard to find. Despite having seen it in so many places he goes, the next time it's like it was never there at all. Yeah, that's frustrating. It's also tiny too. In this recent clip, it's beautiful. Again, high definition. You can really see how intricate the work is, but Torres also discovered that these things are tiny and they come in clusters. so if you find one, there's probably a few nearby. Also, don't destroy it. We still have no idea who or what's making these silk henges, so take some photos, hang out a bit, do some research. Number 9, the Brazilian wandering spider. Its bite can give you an erection that lasts for hours. That's a real fact, and that's how I'm going to start this point here. This animal is dangerous. Its bite, of course, will hurt you. You'll be sweating, blood pressure will increase, hence that side effect. They're more commonly known as banana spiders, so guess I can't eat bananas anymore. There goes my favorite snack. These little guys have been listed as the world's most venomous spider in a handful of years in the Guinness Book of World Records. We love records, record-breaking spiders. If its name didn't already tip you off, these things can be found in Brazil. There's 8 different kinds of wandering spiders. Avoid them all. That's my advice here on MA 10. That's it. How does that sound? Boom. Science is quite interesting here. They're trying to create the next Viagra using the spider's venom. That's why I started with that wild side effect. There's always a point to it. I'm not just being silly all the time. The future is here, friends, and apparently it's filled with spiders. Just cuts to a bunch of old dudes in the woods just hanging out like, please. Number 8. Bullet ants. They're called bullet ants because their bite feels like a bullet wound. Promising start. Awesome. They're also referred to as the Paraponera clavata, but that sounds like a dark curse in Harry Potter, so we're going to call them the bullet ant for now. They're commonly found in tropical rainforests in Central and South America. Their sting is considered, the most powerful in the world, hence the bullet thing, and its effects can last 24 hours. Yeah, another fun nickname for them is a 24-hour ant. They're also the world's largest ant, so you can really see it coming. You should see it coming, worst case scenario. These guys get you in a colony though, game over. There's a good chance you won't even survive at all. One bite is bad enough, let alone a colony. Its venom's so powerful, it's being studied right now for its use as a pesticide. Yeah, we're sacrificing ants to further our research on how to sacrifice ants. This is dark. That sounds pretty dark when you say it like that. There's actually an indigenous Amazonian tribe in Brazil, and they use bullet ant stings as part of a ceremonial process to become a warrior. I would not pass. I wouldn't even make it to the island. I'm not good with bugs. They have to keep a straight face the entire time whilst getting bit. That's so impressive. Number 7, dart frog. You may be thinking, thank God, a frog, something cute, something unlike the bullet ant. Guess again. Not this time. Small but mighty, the poison dart frog is one of the deadliest animals on Earth. I left the word poison out of the title. I juked you out. I did it on purpose. Its shiny yellow skin will certainly attract the eye, but if you decide to try and, catch one of these slippery boys, its poison can kill 10 fully grown adults. All bad. Indigenous hunters figured this out and they coated the tips of their arrows or darts in this toxin. The toxin created naturally here is called batrachotoxin. Another creature we've mentioned on this channel before that also has the same toxin is the pitui bird. That's in Australia though, it's far away. Either way, a lot of poison moving around us in nature. It's actually pretty alarming. Birds and frogs, I'm just gonna stay home. I'm just gonna stay home and do this all day. Number 6, mosquitoes. These guys suck, no matter where you are, but when it comes to the Amazon, like everything else, it's much worse than you could ever imagine. Mosquitoes are one of the most dangerous because they can fly, and you don't see them coming. And once they get you, the damage has already been done. They're just full of blood. How gross is that? They're horrible. If you travel to parts of the Amazon rainforest and you don't have yellow fever vaccinations or extremely strong mosquito repellent, you're gonna have a bad time. These suckers are clouds of malaria just waiting for you to walk into by accident. And then you go, oh, and it's too late. Number 5, decoy spider. Oh, these are all horrible. These decoy building spiders are exceptionally small, but super smart. These spiders only measure to be about 5 millimeters in length, but you might see a much larger spider hanging out in a web that they've created. See, this might sound scary, but this large spider is actually a fake spider. It's a decoy. It's a decoy spider that the small spider built out of various materials like food scraps, debris, even their old skin to make a bigger, scarier spider. That's horrible. I wish I didn't know this. Look, art is subjective, okay, that's for sure. I don't think this is the most lovely piece of animal art on the planet, but it works. It gets the job done. A rather impressive defense mechanism for such a tiny little dude. These spiders were only discovered pretty recently, so again, not much is known about them, as there still needs to be tons of research done, just like the other horrible spider on this list. It is, however, believed that this is a feature that has evolved in this particular spider, so it's possible we've only recently discovered it because it's a new feature. Yeah, how neat is that? Hey, spiders are learning new tricks. Hit that thumbs up. I'm so scared. Cheers.
You've probably heard of sea monkeys before. They sell these to kids, like, I don't know, pets, I guess.
Just add water and you'll have this family of small little creatures who apparently wear swimsuits and go to the beach. They do make them look a lot more fun on the package. But what you might not know is that sea monkeys or brine shrimp are some of the toughest little creatures on the planet. Their eggs can go into a dormant state, and in that state, they can survive all kinds of punishment: extreme heat, freezing cold, radiation. NASA figured this out way back in the 70s and started using them in space experiments. In fact, brine shrimp eggs have flown on multiple space missions, including Apollo and later shuttle missions. Some were even taken into low Earth orbit, exposed to the vacuum of space, and then brought back down to see if they could still hatch. Spoiler: they did. It's kind of wild. These things are sold in toy stores, and yet they're more durable than most military technology. Unless you were to just squish them with your fingers, but you know what I mean. Scientists love studying them because they help us understand how biological life might survive long-term space travel, or even drift between planets inside meteors. Tardigrades, also called water bears, are tiny creatures less than a millimeter long, but they're better at surviving than you and me and everyone else on the planet. Again, when it comes to harsh environments. In 2007, scientists stuck some of these things to the outside of a spacecraft during the European Space Agency's Photon M3 mission. That meant full exposure to the vacuum of space, cosmic radiation, and wild temperature swings, and guess what? A bunch of them survived. Not only that, they reproduced after coming back to Earth. So how do they pull that off? Well, tardigrades have what's called cryptobiosis. When conditions are harsh enough, they curl up into a dried out ball called a ton, basically shutting down almost every function in their body. They basically put themselves into suspended animation, and in this state they don't need food, water, or even oxygen. Their DNA gets wrapped in protective proteins, shielding it from radiation damage. They've been frozen, boiled, blasted with X-rays, and starved for decades, and they bounce back. Some scientists think if there's ever life on another planet, it might be something like a tardigrade. That's why these things have been called the toughest animals on Earth. Deinococcus radiodurans sounds like a dinosaur, but it's actually the polar opposite. It's a microscopic bacteria, sometimes referred to as Conan the bacterium. Yes, the names are deceiving. One sounds like a dinosaur. It's nicknamed after one of the buffest characters in fiction, but I swear these things are not massive. It gets its nickname because it can survive doses of radiation that would just liquefy a human. We're talking thousands of times the lethal dose. Scientists have blasted it with radiation, dried it out, frozen it, even dipped it in acid, and it survived every time. The secret lies in its DNA repair system. When radiation tears its genetic code to pieces, Conan just calmly puts itself back together. Its cells have multiple copies of DNA, so if one gets damaged, it uses the others as a blueprint to fix it. Basically, it has Wolverine's healing factor, which I think would be a more apt nickname: Wolverine bacterium. Last time I checked, Conan the Barbarian can't grow back limbs, but I digress. Obviously, space is no problem for these things. In 2015, researchers sent it into low Earth orbit, unprotected, for over a year. When they brought it back down, it was still viable. Some experts believe bacteria like this could attach to asteroids or space dust and then travel between planets, a theory called panspermia. If anything ever manages to colonize Mars, it might not be us first. It might be Conan the bacterium. Alright, now for something with actual limbs that we can see with the naked eye. The midge. They may look like normal bugs, but some species of these little guys are absolutely amazing. In 2007, scientists sent some midges into space on the same mission they carried the tardigrades on, Photon M3. They exposed them to the vacuum of space and cosmic radiation for over a week, and you guessed it, they survived. So, how? Well, it's the way they handle extreme environments on Earth that probably prepares them for space. Midges are known to live in some of the harshest conditions on the planet, whether it's freezing temperatures in the Arctic or dry conditions in the desert. These things have adapted to survive at all, and that's why their eggs and larvae are able to hibernate in a dried out, almost dormant state. When conditions are better, they basically come back to life. Lichens are one of those life forms you actually see all the time, but probably never think about. They're those weird, crusty patches on rocks and tree bark, but they're not just plants and they're not just fungi. Lichens are actually a partnership between a fungus and either an algae or a cyanobacterium, and together they're pretty tough. In 2008, scientists launched a bunch of lichen samples into space on a mission called Biopan 6. They exposed them directly to outer space, and when they brought the lichens back to Earth, they were still photosynthesizing. Like as soon as they hit sunlight, they just picked up where they left off. The reason they survived is because lichens are built for hardship. They're used to living in places like Arctic tundras, hot deserts, mountain cliffs, so their cells already know how to hunker down and conserve energy. When you've been training on some of the harshest conditions imaginable on Earth, space is just another challenge. Scientists love these things for that exact reason. They're like a living model for what might survive on Mars or the Moon. Bacillus and Clostridium species can form spores, tiny rock-hard capsules. These spores are dormant, super tough, and able to survive insane conditions like heat, radiation, and total vacuum. Back in 2008, researchers launched spores of Bacillus and Clostridium into low Earth orbit on NASA's EXPOSE mission. They were stuck on the outside of the International Space Station, getting blasted with UV light and space radiation. Some of them were even left out for 18 months, and yep, some of those little spores still germinated after they got back. They go into total shutdown mode and then wrap themselves in this thick shell made of protein and this. So this blocks radiation and helps them retain water. This ability is what makes scientists think spores could maybe survive the trip from Mars to Earth on a meteorite. Again, that panspermia idea. Cryomyces is a black fungus that lives in one of the harshest places on Earth, the dry, freezing valleys of Antarctica. These valleys are so desolate, NASA actually uses them as a stand-in for Mars. So yeah, if you can survive there, you're already halfway to being a Martian. In a 2016 experiment, scientists took these things and sent them into actual space, though, stuck them right onto the outside of the International Space Station for 18 months, and the fungus lived. It even kept its DNA mostly intact and could still grow once it got home. Cryomyces are packed with melanin, the same pigment that protects human skin from UV rays. Only this fungus cranks that up to 11. The melanin in cryomyces helps absorb radiation and neutralize reactive particles that would shred most living cells. On top of that, its thick cell walls help keep it from dying out or breaking apart in space. Next on the list is Halomonas titanica, or Titanicae. This one's not a space traveler yet, but it's still living in an environment that would kill most forms of life. This is a type of bacteria that's been discovered eating away at the metal hull of the Titanic 12,500 feet under the ocean. Down there, the pressure is over 380 times what it is at sea level, and there's no sunlight, barely any oxygen, and the water's freezing cold. In other words, a nightmare for most life forms, but not this bacteria. What makes H. titanica special isn't just that it survives those brutal conditions, it's built for them. It feeds on iron and slowly breaks down the Titanic's metal, forming these weird icicle-like formations aptly called rusticles. Scientists think the Titanic will be nothing but a rust stain in a few decades, unfortunately, thanks to this bacteria. But researchers are studying it to understand how it could help with what's called bioremediation, which is the process of using living organisms like bacteria or plants to clean up pollution. Imagine using bacteria to safely eat away at old oil rigs and shipwrecks and even waste left in space. So if you've ever seen a weird blob of jelly on the ground after it rains and wondered what the hell it is, well, it's star jelly, aka nostoc. It's a cyanobacterium, an ancient type of life form that's been around for over 3.5 billion years. When the environment gets too dry or too cold, it dries up into a kind of dormant state, basically goes to sleep and shuts down most of its normal functions. While it's in this state, it can survive without water and is protected from things like heat, cold, and radiation. When things finally improve, like when it rains, it wakes back up and starts growing again. Not an animal, not a plant, not a fungus, slime mold is basically this brainless blob that can solve mazes? Yes, it looks like something out of an 80s horror movie, but it's one of the weirdest and most intelligent forms of life on Earth. It has no brain, no nervous system, and yet it can solve complex problems like finding the shortest path through a maze. It's nuts. Scientists have used it to model transportation networks because it's that good at efficiency. But what makes it a good candidate for space is that it thrives in darkness, doesn't mind radiation, and it can enter a dormant state when the environment gets too harsh. In 2021, slime mold was sent to the International Space Station in an experiment to study its behavior in microgravity. It didn't just survive, it kept moving, growing, and navigating its surroundings like it was still on Earth. Some researchers think it's one of the best examples we've got of how simple life might survive and even think in space. It may look like a puddle of rotten mustard, but this stuff is tough and surprisingly clever.
Imagine being in the ocean and seeing a shark the size of a school bus. The megalodon was the largest shark to ever live, stretching up to 60 feet long with teeth the size of a human hand. Officially, it went extinct about 3.6 million years ago, but here is where things get creepy. In 2013, oceanographers found mysterious bite marks on a 30-foot whale carcass. The bites were so massive that no known shark alive could have made them. Some researchers suggested they could match Megalodon. Even stranger, in 1875, the HMS Challenger expedition dredged up 2 Megalodon teeth from the sea floor. When tested, they appeared to be less than 10,000 years old. That's a blink of an eye in geological terms. Add to that the countless reports from fishermen who claim to have seen enormous, dark shapes beneath their boats, and it makes scientists start to wonder. Could the Megalodon still be cruising the deepest parts of the ocean? Imagine walking through a swamp and seeing a snake also longer than a school bus. Titanoboa was the largest snake ever known, stretching up to 42 feet and weighing more than a ton. It lived about 60 million years ago in what is now Colombia. Here's what unsettles scientists. In the Amazon today, anacondas grow over 20 feet long. Locals tell stories of giant snakes that drag entire cows into rivers. In 2016, construction workers in Brazil claimed to find a snake nearly 33 feet long. Photos circulated online, though their authenticity is debated. With the Amazon rainforest still largely unexplored, the possibility of a surviving Titanoboa relative is one that herpetologists don't completely rule out. And if one exists, it would be one of the most dangerous predators on Earth today. Imagine a fish so armored it looked more like a tank than an animal. Dunkleosteus lived 360 million years ago and could grow up to 30 feet long. Instead of teeth, it had sharp, bony plates that worked like giant shears, snapping prey in half with a bite force stronger than a crocodile. What creeps scientists out is how little we know about its extinction. Fossil records show it was everywhere in the ocean, then suddenly it vanished. With the deep sea still largely unexplored, researchers admit a small surviving relative could easily have gone unnoticed. If sharks like the goblin shark can stay hidden, why not something even stranger? Saber-toothed cats get all the fame, but there was another predator even stranger. Thylacosmolus looked like a saber-toothed tiger, but it wasn't even a cat. It was a marsupial predator from South America with giant fangs that curved out of its mouth like daggers. What unsettles scientists is how unique it was. Its teeth kept growing throughout its life, meaning it was constantly armed with deadly weapons. It went extinct only 3 million years ago, which is practically yesterday in prehistoric terms. With South America's remote forests and caves still underexplored, some researchers wonder if descendants of this bizarre predator might still exist.
Dinosaurs are extinct, right? I mean, of course they are. Well, you wouldn't think so if you saw a Chinese giant salamander. They really do look like creatures that would have been roaming the earth during the time of the dinosaurs, and they actually did. The Chinese giant salamander has been around since the Jurassic period, about 170 million years ago. There are 2 main types of giant salamanders, one native to Japan and the other native to China. The Chinese giant salamanders are slightly larger. In fact, they're the world's largest amphibians living in freshwater habitats. It can reach almost 6 feet in length, weighing a little over 100 pounds. Now, seeing a salamander that big and hefty would be alarming enough as it is, but there's another freaky thing about these creatures, and that's the sounds that they're known to make. Their vocalizations have been described in a few different ways. Sometimes it sounds like a bark or a hissing sound, but most eerily is the high-pitched crying noise they're said to make, almost like a human child. Gotta say though, I kind of find these things cute in their own odd way. Just look at this absolute beast of a fish. Has this image been photoshopped? Well, actually, no. This is a real giant catfish, the Mekong giant catfish, one of the largest species of freshwater fish in the entire world. These things can grow as big as a small car, easily hitting lengths of 9.8 feet and weighing up to 770 pounds. Not only that, but they've also been known to live for a pretty long time. Some have been around for decades, up to 60 years. That's a pretty good lifespan for a fish. In terms of appearance, they're not really all that flashy. They look kind of weird. They have this distinctive silver color that makes them stand out. Their mouths are broad and equipped for bottom feeding. They're built for efficiency rather than looks, obviously. One of the largest freshwater fish ever caught was an 8'10" female Mekong in Thailand, weighing 646 pounds in 2005. The giant golden crowned flying fox is a species of megabat native to the Philippines. It's one of the largest bat species in the world. Its wingspan can reach up to 5.5 feet. So this thing could easily wrap its wings around a fully grown person, and picturing that kind of makes me shudder. Now, luckily, these are one of those bat species that do have those cute dog-like faces. If these things looked more like a vampire bat, I'd just never go to this part of the world. Watching these things fly through the air though, they almost look like gargoyles or some kind of prehistoric beast. They have some pretty gnarly claws too, but luckily they don't eat meat. The last thing you'd need is one of these things swooping down from the air, trying to take a bite out of your head or flying off with your dog. Next up, we have the coelacanth. And aside from how creepy these things are, there's an interesting story behind them. The coelacanth was discovered, or actually rediscovered, in the deep waters of the Indian Ocean in 1938. And I say rediscovered because until that point, only fossils had been found. Scientists at the time thought that they'd gone extinct millions of years before. On December 23rd of 1938, a living coelacanth was found in a local fisherman's net. They've been swimming around for 340 to 4 million years. That's pretty spectacular, but kind of hard to believe. Another cool thing about these ancient fish is that many scientists think these things bridged the gap between fish and four-legged land-dwelling animals. They have 4 fins that extend away from their bodies, almost like legs, and they move in that alternating pattern you see with 4-legged animals as well. The harpy eagle. This is one terrifying bird, especially if you're a monkey living in South America, because these birds eat them as well as sloths and porcupines. Harpy eagles are named after harpies, large winged monsters from Greek mythology, and the name really fits. These eagles are true apex predators, some of the largest eagles in the world, with wingspans of up to 6.5 feet across. They live in rainforests across South America. Female harpy eagles are larger than the males, growing up to 36 to 40 inches and weighing in around 13 to 20 pounds. Harpy eagles' talons 5 inches long, larger than a grizzly's, and they're incredibly powerful, able to crush their prey's bones in an instant. They're very elusive birds. It's really rare to see them in their natural habitat. They're just good at staying hidden, and rather than soaring above the trees like most birds, they fly under the forest canopy, sometimes reaching speeds of up to 50 miles per hour before swooping down to snatch up their prey. The kangaroo, aka vampire fish, native to the Amazon basin. These are a type of small catfish known to swim up inside people's bodies through their sensitive areas. They're small, usually around 6 to 15 centimeters long. They have a slim, elongated body and are kinda translucent, so great, they're even harder to see. They're known to be parasitic and are attracted to the smell of urine and other bodily fluids, hence the swimming up into the body thing, and they get the vampire nickname because they feast on the BLOOD of other fish. They often attach themselves to gill openings of larger fish to feed. They're horrifying. Now, apparently they don't swim up into people intentionally. Most recorded cases involve the fish accidentally entering body orifices, but I mean, how do we really know what these things are thinking? This does not look like a real fish, at least not one that exists today, but it does, unfortunately. This is a Goliath tigerfish. It's a freshwater fish native to Africa. If the razor-sharp monster teeth didn't give it away for you, these are predatory animals. These fish found in the Congo River Basin can get pretty big too, up to 5 feet in length, with the heaviest on record weighing in at 154 pounds. That is too big for something that looks this ferocious. In terms of diet, these things will eat pretty much any fish they can overpower. They've even been known to attack humans. The Goliath tigerfish has very little to worry about. Their only predators are the Nile crocodile. They're often seen as the greatest freshwater game fish in the world. The tarantula hawk. Alright, so based on the name, you're probably thinking we either have a flying tarantula or a hawk with some spider-like abilities. Both of those sound terrifying, but this creature is neither a bird nor a spider. It's actually a wasp, a really big, scary wasp that paralyzes its prey with its stinger before laying an egg inside them, which hatches into a larva that then eats the still living host from the inside. So they're kind of like the real life version of the xenomorph from Alien. If that's not terrifying to you, then you probably just haven't seen Alien. These things are some of the largest wasps in the world, reaching up to 2.5 inches long, and their legs are capped with hooked claws, which they use to grapple their victims, and their sting is said to be one of the most painful in the world. Great news, by the way, you can find them on every continent aside from Europe and Antarctica. I really would prefer it if these things didn't exist. Next up, we have South American monkeys. There are multiple species of monkeys in South America, but there's always been this question as to how they got there. Why is that? Well, because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense why they're there. The fact that there are monkeys in South America is something scientists have actually been confused about for a long time. Primates would have traveled to South America on 2 separate occasions. The first wave went extinct, and they have no connection to the monkeys seen in South America today. So as for how they got there, it's always been a bit of a mystery, but it looks like they might have rafted from Africa around 35 to 32 million years ago. There's just no evidence of them traveling all the way from Africa to South America by land. There are no fossil records of monkeys traveling along the long route they would have needed to take. As for what these rafts would have been, they could have been pieces of land masses that broke off from the mainland. They could have also been trapped on pieces of vegetation that floated out to sea during storms. It does seem kind of far-fetched when you hear about it, but we gotta remember the continents of Earth were much closer together than they are in modern times, and water levels were also shallower. So this theory isn't out of the realm of possibility. Alright, the glass frog can be found in the Amazon rainforest. They're incredibly weird. These things are crazy looking. Maybe not at first glance, you might just think they're an adorable little green frog, and they are, but how do you think they get the glass frog name? Well, there are many different species of glass frog, and many of them have translucent underbellies, so you can actually see their heart and their liver and their intestines through their skin. It's icky, really trippy, and it's not always just their bellies that are translucent. Sometimes their entire body has this at least semi-translucency to it. They look a bit like gummy frogs. Really fascinating animals. Now, the reason for this translucency is that it helps with camouflage. The outline of their bodies becomes softer and less visible, and birds tend to attack translucent frogs less often than non-transparent ones. Another super fascinating thing about these frogs, you can actually conceal the red blood cells in their livers. They do this when prey is near because it makes them appear even more transparent. Somehow they're actually able to control the location, the density, and packing of their red cells without negative consequences like it clotting up. It's pretty wild.
Imagine walking through the forest and hearing the grunt of a predator that looks like a cross between a pig and a wolf. These guys, nicknamed hell pig, was a massive pig-like creature that lived in North America about 30 million years ago. These definitely were not farm animals. Fossils show they were about 6 feet tall at the shoulder, with huge jaws strong enough to crush bone. They scavenged, hunted, and preyed on early horses. Their fossil range stretches from South Dakota to Texas. In the 19th century, pioneers even told stories of tusked beasts roaming the plains. While science places their extinction long ago, the vast wilderness of North America has always produced strange creature sightings. If any ancient mammal could have held on, it might just be the hell pig. What if bears used to be so massive they could outrun a horse? Arctidus simus, known as the short-faced bear, lived in North America until about 11,000 years ago. It stood 12 feet tall on its hind legs and weighed over a ton. Unlike modern bears, it had long legs built for speed, making it one of the fastest land predators of its time. Some cryptid reports from Alaska and Canada describe unusually tall, fast bears that don't quite match grizzlies. Scientists agree the short-faced bear survived late into the Ice Age, so rumors of its survival aren't as far-fetched as they might sound. What if the mammoth's cousin never really left the forest? Mastodons were elephant-like creatures that lived across North America until just 10,000 years ago. They looked similar to mammoths, but had straighter tusks and teeth built for chewing leaves. Here is the weird part. Indigenous oral traditions across North America describe giant forest elephants long after their supposed extinction. In the 19th century, pioneers in Ohio even reported seeing strange elephant tracks in the snow. Scientists admit mastodons survived late in some regions, and with vast Canadian wilderness still unexplored, the possibility isn't dismissed outright. Picture a Komodo dragon stretched to 20 feet long. That was Megalania, a giant lizard that lived in Australia until just 50,000 years ago, meaning that it overlapped with humans. It was venomous, like its modern Komodo cousins, and would have been able to take down animals as large as buffalo. Aboriginal rock art in Australia shows a giant reptilian creature that resembles these guys more than any other living species. Some rural sightings of massive lizards in the outback even today keep scientists questioning whether it might still have descendants hiding in remote terrain. Imagine a creature twice the size of a gorilla standing nearly 10 feet tall. That was Gigantopithecus, a massive ape that roamed Asia up to 100,000 years ago. Here is the eerie part. Sightings of creatures like Bigfoot and the Yeti often match descriptions of the Gigantopithecus. In 2014, a team of anthropologists discovered strange hair samples that DNA tests could not easily classify. While some matched bears, others were inconclusive. Gigantopithecus likely went extinct due to climate change and hunting, but in the dense jungles of Southeast Asia and the Himalayas, some scientists admit the possibility of small populations surviving. If Bigfoot is real, it could very well be a living relic of this ancient giant. The scariest thing about extinction is how often it's wrong. In 2005, scientists discovered a rodent in Laos that was unlike anything alive. At first they thought it was new, but then they realized it was a Laotian rock rat, a species believed to have gone extinct 11 million years ago. This living fossil shocked scientists because it proved mammals, thought long dead, could survive in hidden environments. While not terrifying like a giant shark, its rediscovery suggests larger prehistoric animals might also still be hiding in remote corners of the world. If an animal this small can fool science for millions of years, what else might be out there?
The moose pig, also known as the Beast of Dean, is a cryptid legend that's haunted the woods of Gloucestershire for centuries. It's said to resemble a wild boar, but much, much larger, like a wild boar the size of a moose, hence the name. The Royal Forest of Dean first became a hotspot for sightings back in 1802, when locals reported this massive boar that seemed to be knocking down trees, crushing fences, and letting out what could only be described as this unearthly roar. It wasn't until 1807 that a group of local hunters finally tracked it down and killed it, but when they examined the creature, they realized this wasn't any normal boar. The hunters all agreed that whatever they had killed wasn't from around there, nor was it like any creature they'd ever seen, and after that there were no more problems. That is until 1998, when two locals, James Nash and Marshall Davies, were passing through the woods. It was eerily quiet, the birds stopped chirping, there were no sounds of squirrels, there wasn't even a breeze, just this eerie, dead silence. Never a good sign in a forest, and that's when they heard it. A deep, low growl, followed by something massive moving through the darkness toward them. They couldn't even comprehend how big the thing was. It was just closing in so fast. They started running for their lives, and that's when they heard another unearthly roar echo from the woods behind them. To this day, no one really knows what they encountered. The Did they just freak themselves out? Were they making it all up? Or is something still lurking deep in the royal forest of Dean? In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, there is a cryptid known as the Mapinguari, a beast that's been the subject of local legends for centuries. Some say it's the cursed form of an ancient Amazonian shaman who discovered the secret to immortality, only to anger the gods and be transformed into a giant hairy monster. The Mapinguari is often described as this massive sloth-like creature, standing up to 7 feet tall, covered in long reddish fur. Some versions of the legend say it has backward-facing feet, a flattened snout, almost like a horse, and huge claws. Some describe it having the face of a giant ground sloth. Some describe it having one large eye like a cyclops. But the strangest detail on the creature is the huge mouth on its stomach that it uses to swallow its prey. Sightings of this creature date back centuries, with reports of a horrible, nauseating smell that accompanies it, so bad that it can knock a person unconscious. The Mapinguari is said to move slowly on all fours, but can stand and walk bipedally if needed. Its roar is described as this terrifying thunder-like sound, or a high-pitched scream that sounds oddly, eerily human. In some areas, this creature's been blamed for the deaths of cattle, specifically by tearing out their tongues. Locals claim that the only way to take it down is by hitting it specifically in its belly, eye, or mouth. Bullets and arrows can't take it down. But is the Mapinguari just an ancient myth, or is there really something out there deep in the Amazon rainforest? In the remote forests of Vermont, there's a stretch of land known as the Bennington Triangle, and a lot of weird stuff is said to go on here. People report seeing weird things. Some enter the area and are just never seen again. It's quite the mysterious patch of land, and the whole thing started really in the 1940s, when several people vanished without a trace in the area, including a young woman named Paula Weldon, who was last seen hiking on a popular trail. No sign of her was ever found. And she wasn't the only one. Over the next few years, more people went missing in the same area, and rumors started to spread that there was something sinister lurking in the woods. Amongst the UFO and shadow person reports, you also have stories of a creature simply known as the Bennington Monster. Some describe the creature as being part human, part animal, with glowing eyes and this overpowering presence that seems to distort the forest around it. Others claim it's something more monstrous with a hulking frame and dark fur, something more like a Sasquatch. But is it possible that some large ape-like creature is responsible for all the unexplained disappearances in the forest? Epping Forest in Essex, England is packed with eerie legends, and many of them have been around for centuries. Take Dick Turpin, for example, the infamous highwayman who's said to have held up in a cave as a hideout. Some believe his ghost still roams the forest, riding through the night on his horse Black Bess, dragging a woman behind him. Then there's Hangman's Hill, where the legend says that a hangman pushes your car uphill. There's also the White Hart, a pure white stag, which according to legend is a signal of impending doom. And you don't want to run into a creature called the Black Shuck either, a ghostly dog with big, fiery eyes, which also brings bad luck. So maybe it's best not to walk through the forest on foot and have a scenic drive-through instead. Well, Epping New Road, which runs through the forest, comes with its own set of problems. People have spotted headless bikers, shadowy black figures, and a horseless carriage along the dark stretches of road. In the forests of the northeastern United States, there's a creature that's as mysterious as it is mischievous, the Pukwudgie. These little tricksters are part of Native American folklore, especially known in the legends of the Wampanoag tribe. Pukwudgies stand about 2 to 3 feet tall. They have grayish skin and large ears. Some stories say they have quills or spines on their backs, almost like strange hedgehog-type creatures. While they're known for being mischievous, Pukwudgies can be a lot more dangerous than you might think. If you offend them or get on their bad side, they get really nasty. They're said to be skilled hunters and can disappear and reappear at will, making them nearly impossible to track. Some versions of the legend say they can shapeshift, turning into animals or even inanimate objects. Now, while some Native American traditions view them as protectors of the forest, there is a darker side to the Pukwudgie legend. They're notorious for pulling pranks on humans, playing tricks that can go from annoying to downright dangerous. Some of the most incredible creatures on Earth have been around for millions of years. The eerie monkfish, with its fishing pole lure, to a creature living in freezing waters with a 1,000-year lifespan. And the gharial, with its unique snout designed for catching fish. These are ancient creatures still alive today. Well, this is a strange-looking creature. It's called the velvet worm. These odd but cute little creatures have been around for over 500 million years. Their appearance hasn't changed much. If you've ever seen one, you might think it's a cross between a worm and an insect, but it's neither. It's in its own branch on the tree of life. And I think I get what makes them sorta cute. It's their soft, velvety bodies. They almost look like little fairy tale creatures. Velvet worms are typically about 2 to 10 centimeters long and have segmented bodies with tiny legs that allow them to move slowly across the forest floor. They don't look like it, but they also hunt in a very interesting way. They don't chase down their prey. Instead, they shoot out this sticky adhesive substance from glands near their heads to trap smaller animals. Then they walk over to their prey and eat it alive, using their sharp mandibles to chew through the body. The adhesive can be so strong that the worm can capture animals several times its size. The reason they've survived this long, seemingly unchanged, is partly thanks to their incredibly efficient hunting style. They've found a niche that works perfectly well for them, so there's no need to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Lungfish are some of the oldest creatures to have ever lived on Earth, dating back more than 400 million years. These fish are often considered the closest living relatives to the first creatures that made the transition from water to land. They've evolved a set of highly specialized traits that allow them to survive in environments where other fish just wouldn't. Lungfish can breathe air. A fish that can breathe air. How wild is that? While most fish use gills to extract oxygen from water, lungfish have both gills and lungs, so they can survive in low oxygen environments like stagnant ponds or dried up riverbeds. And when there's a drought, some species of lungfish can even bury themselves in mud and enter this almost hibernation state, breathing air through their lungs until water returns. Gee, I wonder why these things have survived for hundreds of millions of years. While other fish species may have been wiped out during mass extinctions, lungfish have adapted to survive, making them one of the longest living groups of fish, so cheers to them. The nautilus is one of the most iconic creatures from the deep. When you look at paintings of ancient sea life amongst all the scary extinct monsters, you'll usually see these things as well, but they're still around. The nautilus has been swimming the oceans for over 500 million years. If you've ever seen one, you'll immediately recognize the spiral shell-like structure that it's famous for. The nautilus belongs to an ancient group of cephalopods, which also includes modern squids, octopuses, and cuttlefish. But unlike its more evolved relatives, the nautilus hasn't changed much. It's sometimes called a living fossil, as it's considered one of the oldest species still around today. These things have survived through massive extinction events, and one of the reasons it's managed to stick around for so long is that it's very adaptable in its diet. Nautiluses are opportunistic feeders, scavenging on dead fish, and crustaceans, and smaller marine life. They're also known to hunt smaller fish using their tentacles, but that shell is just beautiful, and a big part of that is because it follows the Fibonacci sequence, a pattern that appears a lot, from the branching of trees to the arrangement of petals and flowers. Sturgeons are massive fish that have been around for more than 200 million years. They were here long before the dinosaurs and have survived through major shifts in the Earth's climate and environment. They're hard to miss. They can grow over 12 feet long and weigh up to 1,500 pounds. They're one of the largest species of fish alive today. Sturgeon are also known as living fossils. They have armored bodies covered in bony plates, and their long, pointy snouts are perfect for sifting through mud and sand in search of food. Unlike many other fish, sturgeons don't have teeth. Instead, they have a specialized structure known as barbels on their snouts, which they use to sense their prey. Sturgeons are bottom feeders, relying on their sense of touch and smell to find things like worms and small fish, again, in the mud down there. They also spend a significant part of their lives in fresh water, but then move to salt water to breed, which makes their life cycle very unique.
The tuatara is also called a living fossil, and for good reason. Native only to New Zealand, this reptile is the last surviving member of an ancient order called Rhynchocephalia, a group that lived over 200 million years ago. Despite resembling a lizard, tuataras are not actually lizards, but they belong to the same reptile family. Their closest relatives went extinct a long time ago, and what makes the tuatara even more fascinating is its unique physiology. For example, they have a third eye on the top of their head. It's not very noticeable, but it is there, and it's known as a parietal eye, which is sensitive to light and helps regulate their circadian rhythm. It doesn't work like their other eyes, but it is pretty cool that it's there, and it connects them to more ancient reptiles when their ancestors had more complex ways of sensing things. Another fun fact, the tuatara is incredibly slow growing, and they can live for over 100 years. Monkfish, also known as anglerfish, are a bizarre and ancient species that have been lurking in the deep oceans for over 100 million years. They have a very unique and eerie appearance with their flat, wide bodies, their enormous mouths, the sharp teeth, the bumpiness. Monkfish just look like something from another time. They live in deep water where there's not much light, so they've developed an interesting survival tactic. They have a lure on their heads, a fleshy filament that they use to attract prey. The lure is similar to a fishing pole, and the monkfish dangles it in front of its mouth to attract smaller fish. When a potential meal gets too close, the monkfish strikes, using its large mouth to engulf the prey whole. These fish are excellent predators, capable of swallowing fish much larger than themselves. They're also super adaptable. They can live in all kinds of depths and at different parts of the ocean, so this mix of flexibility and clever hunting has helped them stick around as long as they have. Antarctic sponges are another incredible example of creatures that have survived for a very long time in some of the harshest environments on Earth. These sponges can live for hundreds, even thousands of years, making them some of the oldest living creatures in the animal kingdom. So why do they live so long? Well, it's a result of the frigid environment, which slows their metabolism. In fact, some Antarctic sponges have been found to grow less than 1 millimeter per year, meaning they can take thousands of years to reach their full size. They're found in the icy waters of Antarctica, surviving in a region where very few other species can handle the freezing temperatures and the constant darkness. Something else very strange about these things is they don't rely on sunlight for energy. Instead, they feed on microscopic plankton and bacteria that drift through the water. Antarctic sponges are also super important for the health of the ecosystem. They provide habitats for other organisms, and they play an important role in recycling nutrients. The gharial is a large crocodile-like reptile native to the rivers of the Indian subcontinent. They're the crocodiles that you've seen in nature documentaries, and you're like, oh wait, what the hell is that thing? Doesn't look like a normal crocodile. With that long, thin snout, it's definitely one of the most unique members of the crocodile family. Gharials have been around for over 200 million years, surviving through climate changes and massive shifts in the Earth's ecosystems. They're specialized fish eaters. Their weird snouts are just perfectly suited for catching fish. They use their sharp teeth to grab slippery fish with incredible speed. Unlike other crocodiles, gharials don't need to chase down their prey on land. They just lurk underwater, waiting for the right moment to strike. Their snouts make them highly adaptable for life in rivers, where they often swim with their bodies submerged while keeping only their eyes and nostrils above water. Unfortunately, despite how ancient these things are, the gharial is now critically endangered, with only a few hundred of them left. Horseshoe crabs are another ancient creature that's been around for over 450 million years. Now, horseshoe crabs aren't true crabs. They're actually more closely related to spiders and scorpions, which is odd. These things have a hard horseshoe-shaped exoskeleton and long tails that they use to steer and maintain balance in the ocean. They live in shallow coastal waters where they feed on small creatures like worms and algae. What's truly nuts about horseshoe crabs, though, is their unique bodily fluids. It contains a substance called hemolymph, which is used in a special test for bacterial contamination in medical devices and vaccines. This test is critical for making sure pharmaceutical products
are safe, so horseshoe crabs have still found a way to be helpful after hundreds of millions of years. And their BLOOD, it's also blue, so that's pretty cool. As you can imagine though, because it's so useful in modern medicine, it's also quite sought after. And over-harvesting has put horseshoe crab populations at risk, making them another ancient species that may not be around forever. The coelacanth is perhaps the most famous living fossil of them all. These deep-sea fish were thought to have gone extinct with the dinosaurs around 65 million years ago, but in 1938, a fisherman up the coast of South Africa pulled up a specimen, shocking the scientific world. These things are the definition of living fossils. They've barely changed since they first appeared over 400 million years ago. These guys have very unusual fins. Unlike most fish, coelacanths have paired lobed fins, which are believed to be the ancestors of the limbs that would eventually evolve in land animals. These fins are highly flexible, and when the coelacanth swims, it moves its fins in this graceful, alternating motion, almost like it's walking on the seafloor. This adaptation has led scientists to believe that coelacanths could hold the key to understanding how some of the earliest creatures on Earth made that transition from water to living on land. Coelacanths are incredibly rare, living at depths of 200 to 2,000 feet in the Indian Ocean. In May of 1882, two boys, Ed and Joe, were fishing in a creek near Crosswick, Ohio, when they encountered something that would go down in history as one of Ohio's strangest stories, and that is saying a lot for Ohio. Ed and Joe heard rustling in the bush and started to see what they'd later describe as a massive-sized snake. The creature then charged at them, and when it got close to Ed, it suddenly grew arms and legs. Two arms shot out, and two legs appeared from some hidden spot on its body. It grabbed Ed and started dragging him toward a hollow tree. The two friends, of course, screamed in terror, and three men working in a nearby quarry ran to help. By the time they got there, the creature was trying to crawl into the tree with Ed still in its grip. The men shouted, scaring the creature off, and Ed was rescued. Though he was physically okay and expected to recover soon, he did have strange convulsions and bouts of terror afterward. Now, that very same day, a group of 60 men armed with pitchforks and axes gathered around said tree. When they started chopping, the creature leaped out and ran upright like a person off into the forest. It was described as this 30 to 40 feet long creature, 12 to 14 feet tall, and it sped away and vanished. No one ever saw the creature again, but it became known as the Crosswick Monster. In 1952, the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia became the site of one of the strangest cryptid encounters in history. It all started when a group of youngsters and their teacher were playing baseball when they saw a mysterious light in the sky, which crashed into the nearby woods. Curious, they went to investigate, and they saw something they couldn't make sense of. A 10-foot tall creature with a glowing red face, a spade-shaped head, and a body wrapped in this metallic-looking fabric. It was also hovering in place. It began slowly moving toward the group, who quickly dashed back out of the forest and into town to report the incident. There were multiple investigations, but no concrete evidence was found to explain the encounter. In 1973, deep in the forests of Tennessee, a group of hunters reported an unusual encounter with a creature they could only describe as a wild man. The group was out hunting when they came across a large, hairy figure standing between the trees, staring at them with glowing eyes. The creature was roughly 7 feet tall, with thick, matted fur covering its body. The hunters described it as having a pungent, musky odor similar to a wet dog. Yum. One of the hunters fired a shot at the creature, but it disappeared into the woods before anyone could get a good look at it. The group found no tracks or evidence of the creature afterward either. This sighting would become part of a larger collection of, quote, wild man sightings in the Appalachian region. And ever since, there have been theories that there could be some reclusive, undiscovered species living deep out in the woods. This last story just chilled me to the bone.
I'll call it the Watcher in the Woods. It comes from Reddit user Jamie11134 and goes as follows. I live right next to the woods. I can see them out my window. Well, one night I was sitting on my bed watching TV when a light flashed through my window. I looked around and there was nothing there, so I brushed it off as me being crazy. About 5 minutes later, it happened again, so I looked around again, but there was still nothing. The third time it happened, I was getting ticked off, and I assumed it was one of my stupid neighbor's kids who always mess around. I opened my window to tell them to piss off, but as I looked closer, the only thing I saw was a black purse, one that I had lost about a week before when I went clubbing. Something in my head was screaming to get away from the window, so I shut it and closed the curtains, locked my bedroom door before calling my dad. He came over immediately and grabbed the bag from outside, then locked all the windows and doors before checking the whole house. We looked through the purse and nothing had been taken, but there was also a small note crumpled in it that said something along the lines of, "Watch your back." My dad called the cops, who also did a full sweep of the house and took the purse back with them. The next morning, they found a flashlight and a backpack, which had a small collection of pictures of me that had been taken over what looked to be the course of a year. Fouke Monster, aka the Boggy Creek Monster, is probably most famous for the cult 1972 docu-horror movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. But stories about this creature stalking the forests around Fouke, Arkansas actually go back to 1851. But in 1971, this creature that had only been whispered about by locals suddenly made headlines when a disturbing report came from a couple named Bobby and Elizabeth Ford. Elizabeth had been sleeping on the couch and thought a bear was reaching through her window. Well, it turns out it was not a bear, but a large ape-like creature. Her husband and brother-in-law chased it off, firing shots at it, but they couldn't take it down. Later, they found 3-toed footprints near the house and scratches on the porch. A few weeks later, 3 people reported seeing the same creature cross a highway, and other locals and visitors started reporting strange sightings too. Over the years, more tracks were found and people kept spotting the creature. In 1991, someone claimed to see it jump from a bridge. By 1997, there were 40 reported sightings, and in 1998, it was supposedly seen near a creek bed. The Fouke Monster is still a big part of local legend, with sightings continuing from time to time. Stories about a lizard man stalking Lee County, South Carolina date back to 1988. It all kicked off when local sheriffs were called to check out a vehicle that had been damaged outside a house near a swamp. The car had huge tooth marks and scratches all over it. Once the story hit the news, a teenager named Christopher Davis came forward with his own experience. He said that 2 weeks prior, his car had also been messed up, but this time he had actually seen what did it. He described the creature as this massive 7-foot-tall lizard-like thing with 3 fingers on each hand, red eyes, and green, wet, scaly skin. Christopher was driving home from work one night when he got a flat tire. As he was fixing it, he saw the creature coming toward him. Freaked out, he jumped into his car and tried to drive off, but the lizard man was fast and it actually chased him down, running at 40 miles per hour, and even jumped onto the roof of his car, scratching at it. Christopher slammed on the brakes, sending the creature flying off, and then he sped away. Once Christopher's story hit the papers, the whole town just went crazy. People were reporting more sightings, and the local radio station even offered a $1 million reward to anyone who could catch the lizard man. But by the end of that summer, reports started to fade out, and local sheriffs started saying it was probably just a bear, because, of course, bears and scaly, red-eyed lizard monsters look exactly the same, right? The Enfield monster case started in April of 1973, when a strange creature was reported in Enfield, Illinois. The first sighting happened one night when a man named Henry McDaniel heard scratching at his door. Thinking it was a bear, he grabbed a firearm and flashlight and cautiously made his way to the front door. But when he opened it, he saw something. It just wasn't a bear. He described the creature as being about 4.5 feet tall, with 3 legs, short arms, and big pink glowing eyes. It was grayish and hairless. McDaniel fired at the thing, hitting it, and the creature made a sound like a wildcat before hopping away, covering 50 feet in just 3 jumps. When McDaniel called the police, they found strange footprints near the house,
which were dog-like but apparently had 6 toes. McDaniel's screen door had also these large scratches taken out of it. A couple weeks later, McDaniel reported seeing the creature again near railroad tracks. A search party later reported coming across an ape-like creature near an abandoned building. More strange sightings started pouring in, and some started to wonder if the creature was some escaped animal from the zoo, like a kangaroo or an ape. McDaniel, who'd once had a kangaroo as a pet, oddly enough, was sure that this thing hadn't been a kangaroo though. Till this day, no one has ever figured out what was lurking in the woods around Enfield, Illinois. The Michigan Dogman is a creature that's been part of local legend since 1887, when it was first reported in Wexford County, Michigan, described as this 7-foot creature standing on its hind legs, but with the torso of a man and the head of a dog. It's also said to have glowing blue or amber eyes and lets out this terrifying howl. It sounds like an eerily distorted human scream. While it wasn't widely known until later, the Dogman is said to have been haunting areas around the Manistee River long before the first reports came out. The first big encounter, though, was in 1887, when 2 lumberjacks claimed to have spotted a creature with the body of a man and the head of a dog. And over the years, there have been other sightings, including one in 1937 in Paris, Michigan, where a man was attacked by wild dogs, one of which was walking on 2 legs. There were more reports in the 50s and 60s, and in the early 90s, a man simply known as Ben to the press reported seeing the Dogman multiple times in Ottawa County. One time he saw it standing behind a car in his parents' driveway. Another witness, in 1994, hit a very large animal with his car, thinking it was a bear, but found gray fur left behind in the grill. The Honey Island Swamp Monster, also called the Cajun Sasquatch, is a creature said to live in the Honey Island Swamp in Louisiana. Descriptions of it are pretty similar to Bigfoot, a large, hairy, bipedal creature, about, again, 7 feet tall. I don't know what it is with all these 7 feet tall monsters. This one, though, with gray hair and glowing yellow or red eyes, and a horrible smell. People who've claimed to see it say it looks like an ape-human hybrid, and the creature is even sometimes called the Louisiana Wookiee, or just the Thing. Some people have reported finding unusual footprints, with only 4 toes instead of the usual 5, which is pretty strange for a primate. The first reported sighting happened in 1963. Harlan Ford, a retired air traffic controller turned wildlife photographer, had taken footage of this strange creature with a Super 8 camera. The footage was only found after his death, in 1980 though, when a reel of film showing the creature was found among his belongings. But even back in 1974, Ford and his friend Billy Mills said they had found strange footprints and the body of a wild boar with its throat slashed in the swamp. Today, people still believe the creature roams the swamp. Some people believe the creature, or creatures, may be escaped circus chimpanzees from a train crash that happened in the early 20th century, and then the story goes they might have just ran out into the woods and eventually adapted to their new environment. Now, we've covered a lot of big, hairy monsters, so let's change things up for a moment with something very different. I don't know what to make of this one. Is it a ghost, a demonic spirit? Not sure, but the story comes from Reddit user Mr. Witch, who writes, I was hiking through the remnants of a remote, long-abandoned town in the surrounding area. To get as far into the woods as I was, you had to cross fallen trees over a creek 3 times. I had just crossed the 3rd bridge and was about 5 miles in when something blue caught my eye just ahead of me. There was a man, in his 60s at least, wearing blue satin pajamas, sitting in a tree. The closer I got to him, the louder he laughed. It wasn't a maniacal laugh, but it set off all the alarms in my head nevertheless. He also wasn't wearing any shoes, but looked well-groomed and clean. I gave him a friendly nod as I passed, and he just kept laughing. Then it stopped. I turned, and he was gone. There was no branch cracking, plants rustling, nothing. He was just gone. Still rubs me the wrong way. The area I was in was pretty rough, like very secluded. Not very many people venture as deep as I was that day. No idea what was going on there.
Number 4, the electric eel. First of all, never rub an electric eel like they're a genie lamp. You're gonna want 3 more wishes if you do that, my friend. That was the moray eel. That one can bite your fingers off, which is horrible. But you should never touch an eel in the first place because a lot of them are electric. As its name hints towards, these type of eels can mess you up even if you weren't to get the first hit. specifically the newly discovered 2.5 meter Electroforus Volti. Yeah, the Electroforus Volti. No, that's not a new hybrid car coming out on the market. This is a dangerous beast. It was appropriately named after Alessandro Volta, aka the guy who invented the battery, and it can release a shock up to 860 volts, more than 7 times the voltage of your average wall plug. It was recently discovered only a year ago that electric eels in Amazon rivers like to travel in packs. They like to travel with their friends, and they all head to the bar together. How fun is that? Packs of electric water snakes. Does it get worse than that? It can't get worse than that, can it? Number 3, black caiman. It can get worse than that. It can get a lot worse than that. If you're not a fan of alligators, you might want to skip to the next one. Black caiman is the largest family member in the Alligator Day crew. These super alligators live in calm, slow-moving rivers, places you wouldn't expect, a dinosaur to be and jump out at you, essentially. Just like dangerous river snakes, one I might talk about later, these black caiman will take it slow and just wait for their prey to have a sip of water. And then at that point, the largest predator in the Amazon will grab its lunch and quickly return to the water, just like that. Be very loud and very fast. This thing eats birds, it eats reptiles, mammals even. Yeah. This thing can and will eat everything. Between 2008 and 2013 alone, there were 43 black caiman attacks on people. Yeah, a handful of these attacks were fatal. I'll leave it at that. Number 2, pink dolphins. We'll do a nice one before we do the horrible big bad number 1. Deal? Deal. Pink dolphins of the Amazon River. They're the largest of all river dolphins, and adults, more often than not, males end up turning pink as they age, and we have no idea why. Scientists aren't exactly sure why these guys are pink or why the color comes later in life, seeing as, they're born gray. Our leading theory here is that the color is brought on by scar tissue that results from fighting with other dolphins or predators. I'm sure it's not an easy go, swimming through schools of electric eels and all that jazz, so yeah, fair, it could be a pretty rough environment. Some old legends hilariously mention that pink dolphins maybe can turn into a handsome man in the evenings, and then during this time they would hypnotize and seduce young women before turning back into dolphins again near sunrise. Yeah, forget Morbius. I want to see that movie. That's a supervillain origin story I would pay to see. The pink dolphin handsome man. He has one day to find love, and then he turns back into a dolphin. Number 1, green anacondas. Of course, we have to talk about the anaconda, specifically the green anaconda. It's green like the Hulk, because it's always angry and scary and violent. This movie came out 25 years ago. I remember watching Anaconda with my family, and it made me extremely afraid of snakes, actually. This was probably the one that did it. So how accurate was that film? Although the green anaconda is a non-venomous snake, the boa constrictor is still one of the most dangerous ever. It's the most feared, definitely the most feared. Green anacondas live in calm marshes or slow streams, and again, they wait until their large prey gets thirsty, and once they come to the water, the anaconda suffocates and wraps around its lunch. Yeah. Anacondas hunt prey that's larger than us humans, so if they wanted to, they could for sure eat us. There's only no evidence of it happening because humans rarely interact with them in general, so anacondas probably don't know they could eat us. Green anacondas can reach lengths of up to 30 feet, so plenty of space for you and yours. Awesome. You and yours. He ended on a voice crack. That's great. That's how scared I am of this anaconda.
And number 10, a new deep sea batfish, what I can only describe as wet ravioli with a face. This dumpling with a face has been called cute all over the internet, so from now on, if I'm ever called cute, I'm taking it as an insult. As Consider Nature on Reddit put it so eloquently, batfish are a benthic anglerfish which can be found on the ocean floor in tropical and subtropical waters worldwide. Unlike the deep sea anglerfish we usually think of having glowing lures, batfish lures release chemical signals that attract prey. Kinda like if you tried to attract a French person by duct taping some smelly cheese to your forehead. Can confirm this does work, by the way. Batfish pelvic fins are thick and muscular, allowing batfish to use them to walk across the seafloor. They're actually generally poor swimmers. Now this guy probably looks nothing like that when underwater. Like the blobfish, a lot of deep sea fish have bodies that are designed to be squished by intense ocean pressures. I can't confirm this, but I believe that this fellow over here employs a similar strategy to the blobfish in that he has naturally gelatinous tissues that are designed to be compressed and give it a more neutral buoyancy, allowing it to stay at or just above the seafloor very easily. That makes sense since this fella is a bottom dweller. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9, way too many arms. This newly discovered sea creature looks more like a bowl of ramen. In the depths of the northwestern Africa coast, scientists trawling these trawlers grasp at a new discovery. Let's see what I I did there? Astrodendron juancarlosi, a newly discovered basket sea star species, a distant cousin of the starfish family with countless arms that intricately weave and wind. With a body resembling a tangle of ropes adorned with pointed calcium bumps, this enigmatic being blends seamlessly with the corals it calls home at depths of 150 to 2,600 feet beneath the waves. At number 8 is the mysterious gelatinous creature spotted in the uncharted reef in the Pacific as recently as June of this year, 2023. Diving into the uncharted oceanic realms 900 miles south of the Hawaiian Islands and 4,600 feet below the surface, researchers stumbled upon a true enigma, a vibrant, bright orange creature with 3 arm-like extensions atop its head. Resembling a jellyfish but defying convention, initially this creature was thought to be a helmet jellyfish, but after the researchers reached out to an expert on dry land, it was discovered that it's actually a rare species belonging to the Bathychorus genus. This bizarre species had only been seen once before, back in 2015, and it still remains nameless, a true mystery of the deep sea ocean. At number 7 is the slender shrimp, the 8-foot-tall tentacled and faceless shrimp in a suit that stalks from the shadows. I'm kidding, but that is what this shrimp is called though. Deep beneath the waves of the Sea of Japan, a peculiar sight unfolded. Imagine, if you will, a minuscule shrimp adorned with crimson spots gracefully navigating the seafloor's rocky expanse. Its delicate, almost see-through body and spindly antennae gave it an air of mystique. Now what's fascinating is that this shrimp, dubbed A. exilis being Latin for slender, hence the terrible opening joke, is no ordinary find. It's an entirely new species, a remarkable addition to the ocean's inventory of life. At number 6 is the faceless fish. Shoot, I should have saved my Slenderman joke for this one. Oh well. In the uncharted depths of Australia's coast, a team of scientists embarked on a daring journey. Their mission? To unveil the mysteries hidden beneath the waves. And unveiled they did, a remarkable discovery, a fish like no other, lacking eyes and a discernible face. The faceless cusk, as it was affectionately named, emerged from the icy darkness, captivating all who laid eyes on it. But hold on tight, because here comes the twist. The faceless wonder wasn't entirely new to the world. It turned out to be a cusk eel, Typhonus nassus, or blind hake, in the language of ancient Greece.
Now, this may be the strangest creature I've ever talked about on the channel, Veggie Man. So in the woods around Fairmont, West Virginia, there's this strange cryptid known as the Vegetable Man, or Veggie Man. It's described as a towering figure, easily over 7 feet tall, with a thin, semi-human shape that seems to be part plant. Its arms look like long, thin reeds, and its eyes flash through colors rapidly changing from red to yellow. Then there's the ends of its fingers, which have suction cups with sharp thorns, almost like something you'd find on a carnivorous plant. The most infamous encounter with the Veggie Man happened in 1968, when a hunter named Jennings Frederick was out in the woods. Really feels like his first and last name should be swapped, but whatever, that is not the strangest thing about this story. So as Jennings Frederick was tracking some game, he started hearing a weird sound, something like a high-pitched jabbering, almost like a record player spinning too fast. He started following the noise before eventually coming face to face with something he was never expecting to see, even in his wildest dreams. It was some sort of creature. He said it looked almost sickly and weak, but that as soon as he locked eyes with it, it began to communicate with him telepathically. It claimed to come in peace, even asking for medical help, and as shocked and terrified as Frederick was, it seemed the thing meant no harm, at least at first, because suddenly the creature lunged at him, wrapping him up in its surprisingly strong grip as it pierced his skin with its thorny fingers. Frederick found himself mesmerized by the flashing colors of its eyes, but then, just as quickly as it appeared, the creature raced back off into the woods, leaving Frederick completely mortified, convinced that he just encountered something extraterrestrial. That was the only known sighting of the Veggie Man. So what do you think it is? An alien, a monster, a hoax? Let us know in the comments. In the summer of 1944, Summit County, Ohio became the scene of one of the strangest encounters ever to hit the state, which is saying a lot for Ohio. People living near Cuyahoga Valley National Park started reporting sightings of a massive python around 15 feet long. At first, authorities figured it was just another tall tale. There are no giant snakes slithering around Ohio, but in this case, it turns out there actually was. See, as more and more reports rolled in, it started becoming clear that people were seeing something, and it turned out that somehow a massive python had been let loose in the wilds of Ohio. As for how it got there, that's still a mystery to this day. Some think it escaped from a private collection, others wondered if someone just intentionally
dumped it in the woods. Regardless though, the residents of Summit County weren't too happy about the situation. The snake wasn't just lurking in the woods, it was roaming through their farms, it was leaving these giant indentations in the ground, and it was attacking people's livestock. The locals were terrified, and authorities launched a full-scale search. The python was never found though. By the time fall rolled around, it was presumed the creature was dead, most likely just unable to survive Ohio's winter. But for that one summer, Ohio had an actual wild python on the loose. It seems like an urban legend, but it was not. This next story comes from Reddit user FickleParticular83, who told a story about a harrowing experience his neighbor had while working as a park ranger. It goes as follows. My neighbor used to be a park ranger for the National Park Service. He once told me he was making the rounds at a park in the Appalachian Mountains. It was a gorgeous night with a bright moon, clear skies, and a nice 75 degrees. 30 minutes into his shift though, he feels something liquid tap on his shoulder. First he didn't think anything of it, thinking it could be an animal doing its business up in the tree. He wipes it away, only to notice that the liquid was sticky. Flashed his light on his fingers and saw BLOOD, which startled him, but not as much as what he saw next. When he shined his light up the tree, way up top was the carcass of a mangled male deer. Its body was totally ripped up and twisted. Obviously seeing this is creepy as heck, but what really bothered him was that the tree the deer was hanging from was really tall and difficult to climb. The first 20 feet of the tree had no branches, and the deer carcass was maybe 100 feet up in the tree. I argued it was maybe a cougar or some other mountain lion, but he didn't think a cougar would stash their prey this high up. He also told me there were no cougars in the state, let alone that one park. The squonk is said to be a strange creature that hails from the hemlock forests of northern Pennsylvania. First written about in 1910 in Fearsome Creatures of the Lumber Woods, the squonk is described as an incredibly shy and weepy creature with a really rough appearance, to say the least. Imagine a small, ugly, wart-covered animal with a face that even a mother couldn't love. Comes as no surprise that the squonk is constantly crying. In fact, if you ever wanted to track one down, all you'd need to do is follow the trail of its tears. The squonk has the ability to dissolve into a puddle of tears when it's frightened or trapped, so if you ever manage to corner one, don't expect to actually catch it. Some versions of the story also say that squonks are especially slow on moonlit nights because they avoid looking at their reflection in the water, afraid of seeing how ugly they are. From Reddit user Skeleton Mole Stir 3000, couldn't say that word altogether. Anyway, this Redditor told a story about a strange photo that their mother took of the woods outside their home. Notice anything strange about this picture here? Well, here's what the Redditor said. My mom built a walkway to the forest behind our house, lined with driftwood and mossy sticks, and took this picture to show my brother. But she noticed something weird in the background. She cropped the image and circled the figure. I wander around in the forest behind my house all the time, and the worst thing I've seen out there is a coyote or a black bear. Also, I know the layout of trees and plants in my backyard, and it's pretty evident that this wasn't a tree stump. I live by a really tame and shallow forest, and due to its proximity to different neighborhoods, it even has cell service. We figured it must have been a person, so we tried to recreate the image, but a person in that spot just stood out way too much, and it wasn't ever as shrouded or shadowed as this figure. Nobody in my family was outside at the time, and my mom said she was alone when she took that picture. Weirdly, the figure in the picture seems to be the wrong color, wrong lighting, and wrong resolution. It almost looks like it was just photoshopped in. Its color and build looks too pale gray and statue-like to be a person. What is this thing? The user, if you're interested, also attached this image of the woods outside their home without the mysterious figure present.
At number 5, Antarctic creatures under ice. Scientists accidentally stumbled upon a real-life frozen party under a colossal 900-meter thick ice shelf. The scientists had been drilling through Antarctic ice for cores, only to discover sponge-like creatures and other potential unknown species hanging out on a boulder at the sea floor. Now here's the kicker. These creatures aren't the animals we're used to, since these extremophiles chlorophylls are chilling, literally, in an environment previously thought to be uninhabitable. Complete darkness, freezing cold, and no snacks. And yet, these critters are living proof that life can thrive in the most unlikely places. But despite the fact that they're right there, scientists are still baffled about how they could possibly survive down there, having been found a whopping 1,500 kilometers away from any source of light for photosynthesis. So what's the deal with these Antarctic partygoers? How did they end up there, and what's on the menu? At number 4 is the translucent blind eel. This nightmare fish was only discovered just recently, so there's not a whole lot of information about this dude just yet. But from what I can find, it's thought to be a new type of blind cusk eel. So it's not really a true eel, but a type of bony fish. It was found 3 miles below the surface, and its skin is described as loose, flabby, and gelatinous. Blind cusk eels also maintain the traits of their young into adulthood. Think salamanders versus axolotls. The breeding habits are also pretty interesting. When encountering a female blind cusk eel, the male will give her something called a spermatophore, which is basically a little capsule full of sperm, so she can fertilize her eggs when she chooses rather than laying them, and she'll eventually give birth to live young. Big shout out to Yellow Bloods on Reddit for consolidating all of this information. At number 3, tripod fish. In the depths of the ocean, a strange character takes the stage, the tripod fish. This deep sea oddity stands tall on elongated fins, defying the slow currents near the ocean floor. It's an odd looking yet calculated stance, standing on the substrate facing the current and piercing about 3 feet above the sea floor with its elongated fins, elevating it high enough as to be affected by the deep sea ocean current, which is almost non-existent on or slightly above the ocean floor. Up high enough where there's more current, these elongated rays like mystical tendrils shift from stiff to fluid depending on whether or not it's in hunting mode or swimming mode. As if the spectacle wasn't enough, the tripod fish sports pectoral fins that reach out like inquisitive antennae, feeling its way through the dark waters. This creature's bizarre adaptations remind us that even in the most uncharted corners, life still finds a way to mesmerize and thrive. At number 2 is the terrifying translucent high-fin lizardfish. If you're scared of what lurks in the depths of the ocean, look away now. The deep sea lizardfish with their innumerable razor-sharp teeth are apex predators of the midnight zone, lurking over 3,000 feet below the surface. Cold and dark, they thrive in temperatures around 38 degrees Fahrenheit. These ambush masters feast on anything that swims by, including their own kind. Remarkably, they're also hermaphrodites, so no mate goes unnoticed. And at number 1, a new 10-legged crustacean discovered in China again in June of this year. Deep within the mysterious forests of China, a peculiar discovery has emerged, a tiny crab with 10 legs. Huddled in muddy puddles, these enigmatic crustaceans, which are now named Cinelopodemon curatum, have been quietly dwelling beneath the rocks in Duqiaoshan Forest Park, undetected until now. What sets them apart besides their leg count is their distinctive body shape, a bluntly angular form in a world of pointy relatives. Now, these newfound inhabitants of the puddle realm aren't alone. Researchers speculate that there might be more of these curious crabs waiting to be unveiled in neighboring provinces. Let this tale serve as a reminder that the world's oddities are often hidden in plain sight, just waiting for curious mind to take a peek under the rocks and bring them to light.
There are still crazy things going on in Chernobyl to this day, decades after the explosion of the reactor at the nuclear power plant in April 1986. Now, animals and nature have rightfully been affected in a big way. According to a study that began in 1991, the organisms responsible for decomposition and replenishing organic matter back into the ecosystem, such as insects, fungi, and microbes, are presenting symptoms of radioactive contamination, which isn't too shocking, but still isn't good. One of the most prominent areas of this effect has been called the Bloody Red Forest. It's a set of woodland where all the pine trees turned a blood red color right after the meltdown, and then died not long after. Now, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, but it's completely unnatural and has caused some issues. Now, 15 to 20 years after they were exposed to radiation and died, these trees were not decaying, when at this point, normal trees would be long gone. Due to this, scientists decided to run some tests by filling specially prepared garbage bags with leaf litter from uncontaminated areas, making sure there were no insects or decomposers present, and then leaving the bags out in both contaminated and uncontaminated wooded areas areas in the exclusion zone for nearly a year to check the decomposition rates of the leaves. Now, bags left in uncontaminated areas were as expected, with normal rates of decomposition between 70 to 90% of the leaves decomposing. But the leaves in contaminated areas retained 60% of their original weight, indicating much less activity by natural decomposers. Now, this suggests that the radiation exposure has a detrimental effect on the ability of the Chernobyl ecosystem to replenish itself with nutrients, which could be causing the stunting of tree growth that has been recorded. But with this comes another problem. The leaves in contaminated areas stayed intact and dry even after almost a year, and this could present a fire hazard, which in turn presents a danger of radioactive contaminants being spread outside the exclusion zone by forest fires. So that is scary and just not good at all. Then there's how this affected all the animals. According to a 2011 study in Biological Conservation, Chernobyl caused genetic mutations in plants and animals increased by a factor of 20. Among breeding birds in that region, rare species suffered disproportionate effects from the explosion's radiation compared to common species. Now, further research is needed to understand how the increased mutations affect species' reproductive rates, population size, genetic diversity, and other survival factors, but it definitely affected animals in a negative way. In 2016, a study found that the eastern tree frogs in the Chernobyl exclusion zone exhibited different characteristics than their neighboring cousins, and in 2023, another study discovered distinct genetic differences between Chernobyl dogs and dogs living only 10 miles away in Chernobyl City. Now, not all the animals living around Chernobyl are entirely wild, as there are around 900 stray dogs, mostly descended from those left behind when people evacuated the area. Veterinarians, radiation experts, and volunteers from a group called the Dogs of Chernobyl captured the dogs, vaccinated them against diseases, and tagged them. Now, in addition to the tags, some dogs are fitted with radiation detector collars. Now, the dogs offer a way to map radiation across the Chernobyl exclusion zone and study the ongoing effects of the accident. While scientists generally can't get a close look at individual wild animals in the zone, they can monitor the dogs closely, and they are, of course, radioactive. Visitors to the area are advised to avoid petting the dogs to minimize radiation exposure, no matter how cute they are. Now, these dogs have increased rates of cataracts because the eyes are the first tissues to show signs of chronic exposure to ionizing radiation. Now, not all is lost on these dogs though, as the unique genetic diversity of these dogs makes them ideal candidates for future studies, seeking to understand the long-term genetic health effects of highly radioactive environments on populations of large mammals, especially in understanding the biological underpinnings of human survival in regions of high and continuous environmental assault, the researchers said. So, I guess that's a plus. Then there's the birds. While there are plenty of them in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, 489 different species to be exact, they are examples of animals that still face problems from radiation exposure. A study of barn swallows from 1991 to 2006 indicated birds in the exclusion zone displayed more abnormalities than birds from a controlled sample, including deformed beaks, albinistic feathers, bent tail feathers, and deformed air sacs. Now, birds in the zone had less reproductive success, and these birds often had smaller brains, malformed sperm, and cataracts, presumably as a result of radiation-related genetic mutations. Now, if you were already scared of spiders, these ones will freak you out even more. The spiders here are radioactive as they build their webs to catch their prey. They add to the dangerous environment of the forest. These webs are not like normal spider webs. In fact, they are woven in abstract ways that suggest genetic mutation is at hand. Now, they're also highly radioactive themselves, making them a danger for any non-radioactive animal to touch. Now, who knew spiders could get 100 times scarier? But that's not the only scary mutated animal there. According to Slate in the early 90s, which was just a few years after the incident, radiation levels in the wild boar that died near Chernobyl were more than 2,000 times what's considered safe. And even today, eating animals from inside the exclusion zone is still pretty hazardous, as a person might be exposed to radiation levels that are dozens of times higher than what's safe. Then in 2016, a video went viral of a catfish swimming around the cooling pond of the Chernobyl Chernobyl power plant. Very few mutations lead to extra large size, explains University of South Carolina radiation specialist Dr. Timothy Masu. Instead, they grow less efficiently, they're less capable of catching food, and they tend to not live as long. Now that's why it's shocking that it's so large, and I would not want to mess with a fish that big. Then, as of 2015, there had been almost 20,000 cases of thyroid cancer reported in people who were exposed at the time of the incident. And approximately 5,000 of these thyroid cancers are likely attributed to them drinking fresh milk containing radioactive iodine from cows that had eaten contaminated grass in the first few weeks following the incident. Yep, you heard that right. The cows created radioactive milk. Now in 2018, it was said that Ukraine still has radioactivity levels up to 5 times the official safe limit, research suggests. Now scientists sampled cow's milk from private farms and homes in the Ravine region, about 125 miles away from the site of the catastrophic explosion. Researchers found levels of radioactive caesium in milk above Ukraine's safe limit for adults of 100 becquerel per liter at 6 of 14 settlements studied. Now the highest levels found were about 500 BQ liter, 5 times over the limit for adults, and more than 12 times that for the young. The study was carried out at the University of Exeter and the Ukrainian Institute of Agricultural Radiology. More than 30 years after the Chernobyl disaster, people are still routinely exposed to radioactive caesium when consuming locally produced staple foods, including milk, in Chernobyl-affected areas in Ukraine, said Dr. Irina Lebunska of University of Exeter. Though the level of soil contamination in the studied areas is not extremely high, radioactive caesium continues to accumulate in milk and other foods. Now this is just one of the lasting effects, which is horrific. On a lighter note though, an endangered wild horse is making a comeback thanks to Chernobyl. The Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute called the Przewalski's horses the last truly wild horse. Its once large population that ranged across large areas of Asia and Europe was eventually reduced to almost nothing. When Lee Boyd and Catherine A. Hope edited a book about the animal in 1994, the most recent wild sighting had occurred in the late 60s, leading the authors to declare them extinct in the wild. But British ecologists Mike Wood and Nick Beresford, who specialize in studying the effects of radiation on Chernobyl's wildlife, observed that the Przewalski's horses is thriving within the exclusion zone. In the late 1990s, about 30 of these horses were released in the Ukrainian side of the zone, and the population has increased to more than 200. Based on camera trap images, Wood estimated that some of the original horses, identified by their brand markings, are still alive, and photos of juvenile horses also indicate that the population is expanding. And finally, if you didn't know, Earth has both a magnetic field and an atmosphere that protects us from dangerous radiation. Now NASA knows that astronauts on the International Space Station get exposed to 20 times the radiation we get down here on the planet. So after discovering that a fungus thriving around the heavily radiated Chernobyl disaster site consumes radiation through radiosynthesis, they decided to experiment with it in space, and over the course of a month they found out that the fungus actually blocks radiation literally by eating it. The experiments on the ISS revealed that it was utilizing melanin to transform radioactive gamma rays into chemical energy. Now this is actually really exciting because this ability may turn out to be useful in future space exploration. NASA is hoping that the fungus may be used to both shield equipment and the crew from deadly radiation during long space flights, and even more importantly, help clean up radioactive waste. Well, that's all for our list of unsettling creatures found in Chernobyl that won't stop growing.